Thank you. And again, I remind people to turn off their phones, silence your phones, crush your phones, whatever. Okay, let's go. All rise. Before we begin, I'd like to remember and take a moment to think of three people, well, more than three now, unfortunately. People who have passed away, two local and others from another part of the nation. Barbara Harnch, who was the wife of former Council President Harold Harnch, who served so ably in the 1980s, and whose family has contributed so much to our city through the years. And Pat O'Brien Cody, who served the water department, served the building department, and who kept, and I imagine the house will still be kept immaculately up on High Street near the corner of Chapel Street, both of whom have passed away. And I think it's also appropriate to remember the people of Pittsburgh and the Tree of Life Synagogue and the hideous and cowardly attacks, anti-Semitic attacks on their congregation in the past week. There's no place in our society for anti-Semitism. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. I invite you to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk to call us to order.
For the meeting on October 29th, Councilor Devlin.
Here.
Councilor Earl. Present. Councilor Agnew. Here. Councilor Junta. Present. Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor O'Brien.
Here.
Councilor Shan.
Present.
Councilor Tonto.
Here.
Councilor Vogel. Present. Councilor Z. Present. Council President.
Present. The late file items.
There are three late file committee items the council will see on their desk. First is Order 64, which is on question 3. Second is Communication 90, which relates to the half marathon from public safety. The third is Order 33, which relates to the housing plan, Affordable Housing Trust housing plan, that I believe will be part of the presentation tonight.
What's the little council?
I don't have the housing. With the housing?
Regarding those three late file items.
Right there.
Motion to waive the rules and accept, and is that?
Second.
Yeah.
And second, and move to waive the rules and accept them. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Good, we'll take them up in regular order.
I'll get your copy.
And it's time for public comment.
With the housing?
I don't.
No. No one does.
It's coming.
Point of order, Mr. President. You mentioned three late files, but the two I have are the race, which is 90, Communication 90, and then Order 64 is on my desk. What's the third one?
Order 33.
But
Order 33 should be on your desk. I'll get a copy of it. It's actually in the revised packet.
oh, I see.
Is that acceptable, Councilor?
Okay, thank you.
We have, oh boy, we've got a lot of people here tonight. So I'm going to remind speakers to limit your comments to 2 minutes, and you get bonus points if you speak for just 1 minute. Because there are 22 speakers. And I suspect that some of you are here for the same reason. And if you agree with something someone previously has stated, you can kind of piggyback on them and say, I agree with that person, and move on to the next speaker. We get the point. So the first on our list is Amir Ibrahim.
Good evening, councilors. I'm Amr Ibrahim, 85 Prospect Street, and I want to start off by thanking the City Council for considering the resolution number 64 regarding transgender protections and the upcoming ballot issue that sits in front of you. The Human Rights Commission of Newburyport strongly supports this resolution, as protection of transgender rights is actually codified in our city ordinances and also in our state law. In this day and age, with hatred and prejudice so prevalent, and again, I bring reference to the similar 3 instances that Councillor Connell did in 72 hours in our nation, we had pipe bombs sent to former presidents, we had senseless killing of 2 black individuals in a grocery store, and then the heinous murder of 11 innocent worshipers at a synagogue in Pennsylvania during a baby's naming ceremony. Unfortunately, given this climate, we really feel as a Human Rights Commission that locally we need to make a very clear statement regarding the upcoming issue on transgender rights. This not only affects our transgender community, but our entire community. We need to make it clear that hate, bigotry, and discrimination will not be permitted in our community. The resolution as amended that sits before you makes this statement very clear. We, the Human Rights Commission, supports education regarding ballot question 3 and making an official statement regarding this question. This is not politics. This is not campaigning. This is common sense, kindness, and humanity. This resolution simply states factually that certain protections for a subset of our citizens are in peril this upcoming election day. Protections that are already codified as local and state law. The effects of this question are far more reaching than meets the eye, and we must all stop this attack on basic human rights and agree together that this will not be tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucas Phipps.
Is that okay? Lucas Phipps, 2 Allen Street. I am here once again to speak in favor of the resolution supporting a yes vote on Massachusetts ballot question 3. To the audience and Honorable City Council, I want to highlight the simple magnanimity of what can be accomplished tonight. The timing of this resolution comes just a week before Election Day, where basic protections will be put to a vote that so many don't even know is occurring. Human rights supersede politics, and this matter on the ballot before us should have never been made political following its passage and its referendum to overturn it. When the very right to coexist in public places is challenged through baseless and disproven claims, it is the job of those with a heart and a voice to correct it. Tonight, the City Council of Newburyport can show to the state and to the nation exactly what we stand for by standing up for its own citizens and its own legal principles. The Newburyport Human Rights Commission mission statement reads, "It is the policy of the City of Newburyport to uphold the human rights of all persons in Newburyport and the free exercise and enjoyment of any rights and privileges secured by the Constitution and laws of the United States and Commonwealth of Massachusetts." By approving this resolution, you validate identity for so many, validate existing law, and validate a community for all. I would like to thank Councillor Tantar once again for listening to my letter and creating this resolution, Councillor Khan for co-sponsoring it and keeping me updated throughout its process, the Newburyport Human Rights Commission, with particular regard to Amir Ibrahim for their support throughout the push for the resolution, and Councillors Connell and Vogel for seeing through its passage out of the General Gov Committee. For those not mentioned, I hope to be thanking you momentarily. Following unanimous passage of this simple yet powerful decree, vote yes on the resolution tonight, and preserve our city's reputation as a community that cares always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Maybe I'll make the 1-minute test. When you get to the City Council petition about the Maritime Museum, I would urge that the City Council ask the NRA to make available the draft deed that will have safeguards in it that may or may not be adequate, to make them available to the mayor, the City Council, the Historical Commission. The mayor said I would get a copy. I've worked on Upper and Lower Custom House Way, the public rights there. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Outside.
I believe it's Mihalik. I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
You did perfectly. Rita Mihalik, 53 Warren Street. I want to piggyback on what Bill Harris said, and I actually...
I'm asked by the councilors if you can keep it quiet. I'm asked by the councilors if we can keep it quiet out here because they can't hear in there. Okay.
I want to get up again
Sure.
and say, gee whiz,
Someone said somebody had a
the
list to
structure and the
speak.
property
There
is worth $1
is,
million.
it's already
Since
done.
1971,
If
this
you
has
want
been
to be
supported and
recognized, you know.
advocated by federal funds and the city taxpayers' money of Newburyport, and you want to give it away for $100. I'm strongly against that. I really want you to look into it, dig into it, and do whatever you have to do to dig in and get that promise from years ago that it would be granted to the city could lease it back to them for a 99-year lease. That's what we need to do. I think it's just unconscionable to sell city property worth $1 million to a nonprofit organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Connie Preston.
I fear there's no hope of me getting a minute in, but I will read to at least in the sake of brevity. So I want to speak on the retail sales of marijuana in Newburyport. Firstly, I'd like to thank the entire council, especially the Planning and Development Committee, for their efforts on this issue. It's been a long and arduous journey for you and those of us that have been involved since the beginning. Thank you to Councilor Vogel for writing a letter to the editor at the beginning of the year that caught my attention and spurred me to attend meetings to educate myself on the topic and make an informed opinion on the matter. No less than 8 of the 11 councilors have taken the time to engage me individually to educate me and to help me understand the formulation of their opinions. Councilors Connell, Earls, Eigerman, Kahn, Shand, Tontar, Vogel, and Zeed have all taken the time out of their busy lives to interact with me in person, over the phone, or email. Councilor Shand even took the time to invite me to coffee to help me understand how she formulates her opinion. Let me be clear that I am not shaming the 3 councilors that I have not mentioned. They have interacted with me individually on other issues in the past. The councilors are very engaged individuals. They care deeply about the opinions of the residents and work hard to make us aware. I'd like to particularly acknowledge Councilor Khan, good Lord. You've done a lot of the heavy lifting for me and the public to gain the necessary education on this issue. The forum with the Cannabis Commission in the spring really helped me to understand how heavily regulated marijuana sales are and to quell my fears that the retail sales would pose a risk to the kids of our community. At the end of that forum, I commented that I appreciated the opportunity to ask questions and have a dialogue with the experts, but I lamented that I did not have that same opportunity with the City Council. Quickly, Councilor Shand and Kahn reached out to me, and the Planning and Development Committee created that forum. Councilor Kahn has also done a great job of creating surveys so that the council and the public have more information on local opinions on the matter, because this isn't about my opinion, your opinion, or any one opinion, but the majority of the opinions of the majority of Newburyporters. Over the last few weeks, several councilors have been subjected to accusations and bullying. I know it's founded in an abundance of love for and a need to protect children in our community. However, it's been ill-informed and misguided. Words matter, and I only hope that the parents that have been on the sidelines for this can find the teachable moments and something good comes from it all. So, it's worth mentioning that I don't smoke pot. I've never purchased pot, and I have no intentions of purchasing pot at a retail store in Newburyport or any other town in the future. I have battled breast cancer not once, but twice in the last 5 years, so I had every opportunity to obtain it legally, and I chose not to. My concern on the matter has always been with the potential referendum of marijuana. The will of the people of Newburyport pertaining to the legalization of marijuana has been made abundantly clear by a significant margin, and there continues to be no reason for a special referendum on whether to have retail locations in Newburyport. Recent survey data further support that, and there is no appetite for a special referendum. If there were to be a ballot question, there simply is not enough time for the people of the city to get informed and make an educated decision. Historical data show that voters at special referenda are heavily favored toward the elderly and conservative voters. A special referendum on retail sales of marijuana in Newburyport will almost certainly favor not allowing retail sales, which is in direct contrast to the will of the majority of Newburyport residents. Lastly, the cost of the special ballot is not insignificant, and I do not want 1 penny of my taxpayer dollars to go to a ballot that is almost certain to result in an income that is in direct contrast to the will of the majority in Newburyport. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
A bit over 2 minutes.
It looks like Tony Murray. I hope I got the name right.
Maybe Tommy Murray.
Tommy Murray?
Murray.
High Street?
He was at the basketball tryouts with me. So.
Okay. Christine Ricciardi. Christine Ricciardi. Is there a Christine McCarthy?
Yes, there is.
Here we are.
Hi, good evening. Hi. Maybe I don't need a microscope. Microscope.
Microscope, you don't need, but a microphone's a good idea. 'Cause
Yeah,
people-
so my name is Dr. Christine Riccardi. I'm a pediatrician here in Newburyport. I've been serving here for over 12 years. I've also been living in this community for over 12 years. I'm here because I would like us to think about putting our children first. I'm here to ask ourselves, what is our community? What is our mission statement? Who are we? What do we want to be? Do we want a community that's a quaint community in the seaside town that's beautiful, that endorses tourism, that endorses children? Or do we want to be known as something else? I'm not here to judge anyone. I'm not here to say pot is great, pot is not great. We all have an opinion. This is not what this is about. This is about allowing us to vote. I'm not a lawyer. I read these ballots. They're pages and pages long. Quite frankly, I've had many years of education, and it's still obscure. I did see today, I reread that ballot. I said, what the heck did we vote for in 2016? Part of it was straightforward, but then I read paragraph 3, I think. I wish I brought it with me. But it said something along the lines where we're entitled to vote. And I wish I had it with me. Someone might know it better than I do. Don't you get water at these things? Where is it? A city, or this is just an excerpt, this is from the ballot summary. A city or town could hold a local vote to determine whether to permit the selling of marijuana. Did such a vote come in front of me? Did such a vote get advertised in the newspaper? We're in the day of social media where we get blasted with misinformation, and I don't get any information coming across my way in any way, shape, or form that tells me I have a right to vote on this. So I'm asking that we be allowed to have this vote.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have one more thing to say.
Make it brief, please.
I'll try to be brief. This is from the American Academy of Pediatrics. I'm talking here on behalf of myself and all the pediatricians that work for me. Two of those pediatricians, one is Dr. Carolyn Thumser, who's the chief of pediatrics at Anna Jake's Hospital. The other one is Dr. Lars Lundgren, who is the community physician serving the Newburyport school system. We are all board certified by the American Academy of Pediatrics, and we all support the Academy's policies. I'm going to read the Academy's policies. Marijuana is not a benign drug, especially for teens. Their brains are still developing, and marijuana can cause abnormal and unhealthy changes. Adolescents who use marijuana regularly can develop serious mental health disorders, such as addiction, depression, and psychosis. Marijuana causes dulled sensory awareness, motor control, coordination, judgment, and reaction time, all of which can cause accidents involving teens to drive. Marijuana can impair lung function. It can also decrease short-term memory, concentration, attention span, problem-solving skills, which can interfere with learning. If Newburyport only had adults in this town, I would not be here today. But we have children, and we really need to think about putting our children first. It is not harmless to the adolescent developing brain. Okay? When you're 40, 30, 25 and older, your coping mechanisms have been developed. You have a good sense of self, hopefully. Kids have not gotten there yet. And while they go through this process, marijuana is certainly not going to help with their coping mechanisms. I've probably overtalked. I think you get my point. I'm sorry for over-talking. If anyone wants any information from the American Academy of Pediatrics and any policies or any proof by experts, not something on social media, not by any other non-credible source, please let me know.
Thank you, Doctor. We've had 7 of the 23 speakers who have signed up. So when your 2 minutes comes up, I will cut you off in the interest of moving on to get to the agenda that is before us tonight. I apologize in advance for doing so, but we have a lot ahead of us, and I think you get it. Adrian, I have a really hard time pronouncing this name. It starts with an S-H-U-R, and then I'm at a loss. Adrian?
Yes, Silversmith.
Ah,
Hi. Good evening. I won't take up your time, and it's far less controversial. I'm an artist. I moved to Newburyport in January of this year, and I'd like to get involved with the arts here in the community. I feel like I have a lot to offer. I'm requesting at this time that I be allowed to join, or I guess voted into being a member of the Newburyport Cultural
Council.
We'll help you.
Any questions from councilors, as long as we have a nominee before us? Thank you. I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to speak to the members in committee.
Can we turn on the fan?
Margot Lehman, it looks like. Lehman.
Leanna. Hi, I'm Margaret Leanna. I'm on 41 Green Street, and I second everything that she said. I think when we voted in 2016, it was more, I was thinking I was voting for allowing medical marijuana. My teen has plenty of other things that I need to keep him away from, besides adding more to it with retail shops here. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Stevens. No, it's Bryn Stevens, isn't it?
Hi. Bryn Stevens, 195 High Street. I'll try and cram this in 2 minutes. I'd like to ask city councilors, when considering retail pot shops in our community, if you have taken the time to do a full analysis of the impact it might have on our city, not just in the short term, but in years to come. Have you consulted with physicians, pediatricians, ER doctors, nurses, mental health and addiction specialists? Have you done an economic impact study to determine if this is indeed beneficial for our community from a financial perspective, or are we simply subsidizing for-profit addiction? Is a 3% sales tax worth it? What happens to our property values? Even a small drop in the assessed values of our homes could lead to a decreased tax, in which could lead to a budget shortfall. Have you sat in roundtable discussions with business leaders in our community, spoken with HR directors on how they will monitor drug-free workplaces? Have you considered what it would do to tourism in our community, particularly the family-friendly events we have on a regular basis? Will an increase in policing be necessary? If so, will the city pay for it or pass on the cost to taxpayers? What will happen to the city's insurance? What will happen to our homeowners' insurance? What will happen to our auto insurance? Has this been looked into? Have you considered what it will take for our schools to be prepared for an increase in marijuana use in teenagers if vaping is already an issue? What added demands will this have on our educators? Have the police in our city been provided with the right tools and the latest technology to test drivers under the influence of marijuana? And have you considered what might happen if, when regulation changes, and it will change, it is already changing, the CCC keeps moving the goalpost? Are you then thinking ahead of what the landscape of our city will look like when 2 retail pot shops turns to 10? When marijuana is allowed in coffee shops, in restaurants, in liquor stores, in yoga and massage studios, and the list goes on? Can you say for certain that you've left no stone unturned?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I've yet to see an in-depth report from city council members that can convince me in any way that bringing retail marijuana to our community will enhance or better our lives. So why don't you slow down, not rush this decision, take time to study it, how it's affected other communities, and how it might affect our community. And once you've studied and presented all areas of impact, then put it on a ballot. And let us decide as an educated and informed community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patty Hoffman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patty Hoffman. I reside in Ward 4 on Lafayette Street with my husband and 3 kids for 12 years. On Lafayette Street, there are 22 kids, aged 2 to 16. I am here to be the voice for these 22 kids, for my friends and my neighbors who are surprised by the sudden decision to zone retail marijuana stores. I know that each of the counselors are thinking right now, this isn't a sudden decision for each of you. Well, in fact, you're probably exhausted with this topic and probably glad you've come to a compromise. I'm here to tell you that the majority of my neighbors are surprised and concerned. I was one of these surprised people until about several weeks ago. I admit I have not been active in politics and have had a lot of excuses of why I didn't know about the retail marijuana coming to Newburyport. You see, myself and my neighbors are busy raising families. Some of the people that I am the voice for tonight are neighbors battling terminal illness, travel a lot for work. So I hope you understand why we're all surprised. Many residents of Newburyport have no idea how the decision happened. My neighbors expressed to me that they are worried. What change will this bring? They are especially concerned for the welfare of the children of our community. As parents, we do our best to educate our kids about a whole host of issues in society today. Social media, drugs, the list goes on. The decision to put retail shops around our city will definitely send the wrong message I'm trying to convey to my kids and the 22 kids that live in my neighborhood that I'm representing tonight. It takes a village to raise children, and I'm here to tell you all. Many of my friends and neighbors are surprised and concerned. They want to voice their opinions. I urge the council to please consider a separate ballot to allow the residents of Newburyport to opt out of being a city in Massachusetts to offer retail marijuana. Thank you for listening.
Sonia.
Lynn Terrace.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sonia Lynn Terrace, and I reside in Newburyport in Ward 6. My husband and I moved to Newburyport 12 years ago, and for the past 12 years, there's been talk of developing the waterfront. And so far, very little has actually happened. I'm guessing the reason is because the city is being extremely thoughtful in order to preserve and protect the authenticity of our city. And I also ask, how long did it take to build a parking garage? So how is it possible that in less than 2 years, we are ready and willing to open retail marijuana shops in our town? Isn't this as big of a decision? Isn't this as important? I ask that we really think about the impact this could have on our city, our community, and our children. It is not in keeping with Newburyport, and I suspect the majority of people in this town would agree. Can we hit the pause on this and really make sure this is what we want in our city? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Lentelis.
Nice job, honey. We're going to wing this, but I want to say this is a really bad idea, okay? And I can't believe anybody sitting here thinks it's a good idea, all right? Doing the pot shops is going to, I can't imagine you have to believe it's going to change the fabric of the community, okay? It's going to change the dynamic down on the waterfront. It's just going to, have you ever been around a pothead or someone really high? Okay, I talked to friends who went to Denver, or people who moved here from Oregon. All you smell is skunk. You smell weed. It's just not a good idea, guys, and it's going to change Newburyport significantly, and I hope you're all prepared to take the consequences for that change, okay? I'm sorry. That's exactly how it is. And from what I understand, there's a lot of pot shops in the surrounding towns, okay? So if you're 40 or 30 years old and you want to smoke some pot, why can't you just drive over the river and go buy as much as you want? You don't have to have it in this town, okay? And I think the ballot question was pretty flawed, and there was a lot of information on it that I don't think was communicated, and I think it's becoming somewhat of a reality based on false pretenses, okay? It's a bad idea, and it shouldn't happen. Thanks.
Thank you. James Shanley.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. I'm here to speak in opposition for a special election. I believe this should be done during a regular election so that all the voters of Newburyport, not just interested parties, are going to be involved. These elections are very expensive, and that's not where I want to see my tax dollars go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Brian Belt.
My name is Brian Belts. My address is 1467th Street. I wanted to first talk about the wall going up on Reservation Terrace. I really hope that we can get assurance that it's going to go to 63rd Street. I know that there's been some talk about it going to just 69th Street. The way that the road is designed, the water will flood straight into 67th Street because it goes down and then it goes back up to 65th. So that's something I hope that we can be assured will happen. Also about the marijuana bill, the city voted in favor. We need to respect the vote. The title of the bill was regulate marijuana like alcohol. So you guys read the ballots. 3% tax revenue will come in from that, and it could pay for things like the wall that we're dealing with so that our homes don't get flooded. And it also lowers opioid overdose death rates, which I've had very close loved ones die from it. If one life could be saved from regulated marijuana, it should be worth it.
Thank you. It looks like Nicole Upman. No.
Nicole Nadeau, 6 family.
6 something. I'll take it with. Go for it. Go ahead, Nicole.
Nicole Nadeau. I'm a Newburyport resident. I reside at 6 Fan Lane. I've lived here about 17 years. I know some of you. Thank you for responding. I've never spoken at any of these before. What I really wanted to say is I've heard all these reasons here, and many of them resonate with me of why we need to reconsider this. This, for me, isn't an issue. I'm a mother of 4 teenage daughters. It's not an issue about kids and whether kids should be using it, because I don't think any of you here think that kids should be using marijuana. For me, it's just simply, should we be allowed to vote on this issue? So earlier today, I reprinted the ballot question from 2016 so I could reread it to remember what I voted on. In full fairness, I voted yes on the bill. I thought I was voting on legalizing marijuana so that when my 15-year-old was caught with it, she wouldn't, have a record. I had read in the bill, and I reread it again on the ballot question, that towns would be able to make special concessions, regulate things, and call for an opportunity to not sell it at all in the town. I just gave the ballot question to somebody. She read it out loud. And so I really thought, hey, I voted for all of you here. They're going to do the right thing, and they're going to allow us the opportunity to say whether we actually want marijuana sold in our town, in Newburyport. So legalization, fine. Do I want it in my town? I don't. And I really thought that that's what I was voting on. And as I'm talking to people over the last week or so, as I've become more aware of this, I thought this was a done deal. I didn't even know that we had an opportunity at this point to put it on a ballot. I thought, since everybody was talking about zoning and where it should go, that we had to have it here. It was Massachusetts state mandated that it would be here. My husband's been to different meetings. I've read every newspaper article, and I haven't read anything that said, hey guys, you actually have a choice as to whether you want them here at all. Everything that I've read is, where should it go? And so I know that everybody's saying, hey, you're educated on this. We've given voters opportunities to vote on this. You voted to legalize this. People voted to legalize it. They did not vote to have it in this town. Just give us the chance.
Thank you. Dominique Garibaldi. Dominique.
He's coming. Go Red Sox.
Like your shirt.
Congratulations, Red Sox. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. I'm addressing 2 topics, both the cement wall on Reservation Terrace and also the cannabis situation. I think the cement wall we're working out with Sharif and a couple other members was supposed to extend, and also Mayor Holliday's done a wonderful job in getting funding for us. It's supposed to extend from 71st Street to 63rd Street, I believe it is. I just want to make sure we have enough funding. I think proposed funding was $22,000. So is there any chance of getting additional if we need to get down to 63rd Street? Because as you can see, at 67th Street, this was the flooding. So we really need a cement wall to help reduce the amount of flooding that we've had, and I would appreciate it. On the cannabis issue, you know, I understand that there's a lot of opponents to cannabis here tonight. I myself don't indulge, and they have small children, I understand that, but I think you have to be reasonable. This has been voted upon already. There's been many meetings concerning zoning requirements, and we're tackling another subject. Councilor Khan did a random survey. It showed wide approval of cannabis within the city of Newburyport. I think people are concerned about the reduction that may affect their home values for their kids. You know, I raised 3 kids, and as far as I know, my kids have stayed clear of any drug problems. I think what goes on in the home and how you teach your kids is what's the true representative of what's going to happen here. I don't think marijuana stores or liquor stores are really going to affect how your kids grow up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Steve Bowditch.
Hello, I'm Steve Bowditch from Ward 3, and I'm speaking on the special election. I think the issue has been voted on in the general election. I think if we're going to be revisiting this, I think it should also be revisited at not in a special election format, but in a standardized election. It also appears that we do need a certain amount of civics instruction to our voting populace, because if you're not reading the issue properly, you shouldn't be voting. This is your opportunity to speak, so it's our responsibility to be aware of the issues, to speak to the issues as a knowledgeable person, and not cry or take complaints after the fact. I think they have a right to this vote, but I think the vote should be held in a broader forum, not in a special election. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ryan Ritchie.
Ryan
Ritchie.
Hello, I'm Ryan Ritchie. I'm a local resident, a father, and a coach here. My opinions on this really don't matter. I think that the city's opinion does, and what I'm asking for is to make sure we all have a voice and get to vote on the issue at hand, and not singularly have a small group of people make the decision for us. I did vote for the yes for the legalization, but I did not with that vote yes for wholesale marijuana shops to be placed throughout my town. So I, again, without my viewpoint or opinion, I'm asking for there to be a vote so that the rest of the citizens of Newburyport can make the decision if they want marijuana shops here in town. My neighbor here, who is a neurologist, also has some viewpoints on that as well, but wasn't able to sign up when we walked in.
So I won't speak for very long, but where's the common sense? The kids are going to be exposed to this drug. This drug is not the same as when we were kids. It's so much more potent. When the kids are exposed to this drug, it increases the rates of depression and anxiety exponentially. And it also, when they use this, it lowers their IQ. Do you have kids? Do you want your kids to have a lower IQ because pot is more accessible? It makes no sense. None. The anxiety level rate is so much higher in adolescents now because of the rate of smoking pot. Don't make it worse. Common sense. Sorry.
Thank you. Lynn Scow. As we get closer to the sound of your name.
Did a good job that time. Thank you very much. I'm Lynn Scow. I live at 75 High Street here in Newburyport, Ward 2. You've heard from me before on this issue. In addition to being a Ward 2 resident, I'm also a lawyer, and I have a master's in public policy and a bachelor's degree in political science. So I'm very interested in this topic from the political perspective, as well as from just as a citizen of Newburyport. You've heard from me that I am not in favor of having commercialized marijuana in our town. As I read it, people have read to you tonight, and I read it the same way, that when people were voting on the referendum in 2016, they voted to legalize marijuana. They did not vote for shops in this town. The ballot question was clear that it leaves to the town the ability to opt out. We have been in touch with many of the other opt-out movements around Massachusetts, and I can tell you from talking to them, they're having success, and we will here too. There are 2 ways for us to get this on the ballot. The first way, which I was hope that you would all be responsible and do it for us, would be to put it on a ballot as city councilors so that we can vote on it. The second way is by citizen petition. And I can tell you, after being in touch with the opt-out people and being in touch with lawyers, we have come up with a petition, with language to put on the ballot. And right now, we have hundreds of signatures after circulating that petition for 10 days. We are well on the way to getting there, and I'm hoping that you guys will see our momentum and do the right thing, because those hundreds of people who have signed our petition, they're also voters, and they're going to be voting in the next election, and they're going to recognize whether or not you guys spoke on this issue. And I can tell you from speaking to people, every person I've talked to on this issue in my peer group, which is that of parents, except for two, one of which was Councillor Khan, and one of whom was the wife of a person who was doing lighting for the grow facility, every single person has decided to sign the petition. They think that we should have a vote on this issue. That's all I have to say tonight.
Jennifer Aller.
Hi. Thank you for letting me speak. It's my first time being at this.
Oh,
to
welcome.
Speak. Thank you. I was prompted to speak because of the overwhelming voices of not liking the pot shops in Newburyport. And I have to say that I am a person who voted no, and as I educated myself more, I would actually vote yes for pot shops coming in. I understood what the vote was when I voted no. I have children. I'm neighbors with many people here, and I don't think my position is that unique. I think a lot of people actually voted no and would now vote yes. So although there's 100 petitions that say that they would like it put on the ballot, I don't know if anybody who signs that really understands that there's a cost to that. There's a financial cost to that. So I'm here to speak for the people who said no, further educated myself, and now I'm saying yes.
Thank you. And Mike Raymond.
Mike Brennan, 16 Eagle Street. I'm here to request the ability to vote on this issue from you. I think the difficulty that you as a council head in coming to an agreement on the zoning ordinance is evidence enough that this isn't a settled issue in Newburyport. We have a real bad drug problem in our schools, and I say our schools because it's not just the high school. This starts in the 7th and 8th grade, and it's devastating. And I really hope you'll consider that. I mean, and quite simply, the drug problem needs to be fixed, and having retail marijuana in Newburyport doesn't help. It's as simple as that. One other point that I want to make is that there's been talk about the confusion of the ballot, and some people say we should know better, read the ballot properly. This wasn't a ground-up grassroots effort that came to Massachusetts. This was a national organization that put this on the ballot to make money. And here we are today, it seems like about to put it, in our city, and it seems to be all about money, which is just sad when you look at the problem that we have in our schools. I have 6 children, and I know it's real. And you've heard a lot of the testimony from experts tonight about what it does to the developing brain. It's no joke. So please, give us a chance to vote.
Thank you. I have one more name, Marcy Fruman. Is Marcy here?
Is this on the pot issue? Because I wrote on the cement block issue.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Come on in. 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 And Reservation Terrace. Yes, Reservation Terrace. Is Marcy here?
Yeah, I'm here, but I'm gonna, this is my husband, he took pictures and.
I'm Dan Cherney. Nice to see you. Thank you for letting us speak. I'm not speaking about pot today.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. We live out on Reservation Terrace, and for the last number of years and more recently, we've been battling the erosion problem, and there's currently an issue on the floor about a building up of some concrete blocks along Reservation that we hope you endorse. As recently as today, I was out there and took a photo, which I can pass if you like. over the weekend we weren't here, but I noticed walking down the beach. First of all, I noticed a lot of beer cans, which I notice every day on the beach, and pick up quite a few over the period of months. But we lost probably between 1 and 2 feet over the weekend in front of the burn that was established. And right now, between some of the homes along reservation and the rest of that part of Newburyport, the barrier is very meager, to say the least. Probably 3 or 4 feet of sand. There's been talk in other meetings about raising the burn and raising the wall, and I actually met with Darrell and his crew out there about a month or 2 ago, and we talked about ways to stop the ocean from getting into our streets and, more importantly, into our water system, which runs along the streets and underground. And therefore, anything that you can do to help us promote more sand and more support against the ocean, and hopefully not as strong as last year, but certainly off to a good start this year. We hope that you can see it in your minds and hearts, understand and support this effort for the funding of this. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the public comment portion. We'll now move on to the mayor's comments.
Good evening, President Kendall, members of the City Council, members of the public that are here today. I will go really fast. Garage is going well. We're on budget, on schedule. Very tight, though, because of the asbestos issues. Next Butters meeting is November 8th. We will be addressing traffic and paving and resident parking in the neighborhood. I'm very pleased to present information regarding our free cash certification from the Department of Revenue, the General Fund, 2.145, Water Enterprise Fund, 1.18, Enterprise Fund for Sewer, 916,000, and Harbor Master, $554,212 for those in the public. The free cash is money, surplus money that is left over at the end of each fiscal year in our enterprise accounts and in our general fund. Money is frozen until it's recertified by the Department of Revenue, which came through last week. Had a great meeting at Youth Services with the Beacon Coalition, with a really nice, new, energized group of people who are helping to support the kinds of work that the Beacon Coalition is doing. They have a new motto: when youth matter, youth thrive. They're looking for more people to get involved in the work that they're doing. Please sign up on the website. Again, there's some edits that need to happen in this update before it goes up on my blog, but please take a look there for additional contact information. We hosted a Mass Municipal Legislative breakfast last week with policy analysts from MMA talking about what we need to work on over this next legislative agenda, and some of the topics that we're working on are there. The one issue that I do want to take a minute to talk about tonight is combine stormwater and sewer overflows, CSOs. This has been increasingly more of a serious problem in our community as an end user. Manchester, Nashua, Lowell, Lawrence, and Haverhill all are under administrative consent orders to separate their stormwater from their sewage, and it has not happened. And as a result, when we get even the slightest bit of rain, particularly from Haverhill, we have overflows of the sewage plants, and sewage is coming down the river, and we as end users, after spending a significant amount of money, $37 million to be exact, to upgrade our wastewater treatment plant, you could almost drink what we're putting into the river, but instead we're dealing with all this stuff coming down the river. We have started working with the Merrimack River Watershed Council, who presented 2 weeks ago at City Council and then at the Merrimack River Beach Alliance. Had a conference call with Washington staff from Senator Markey's office. Congressman Moulton, the Attorney General, wants to get involved. Did a little press thing with Merrimack River Watershed Council for the Herald. So we have the EPA coming to meet with the mayors and managers in about a month to talk a little bit further about this, but we have to do more work. Our first step is to get more and more people in along the river to understand the seriousness of this problem when these CSOs happen. It's not just coming down the center of the river and floating out to the Atlantic Ocean. We have pictures of dogs and boats, and I'm asking people to send me information that you have that is concrete, data-specific, date-specific on information that you can connect to the river. There is a website there. I ask you to please stay connected and involved in this issue. It's really critical. We met with National Grid last week. We had requested a meeting with them just to get a sense of what's going on in terms of our infrastructure, particularly regarding gas. As many of you know, it's an old system, but we are fortunate that we have only about 17 leaks which are considered level 3. You have 1 immediate response, 2 6 months, 2.5 a year, and 3 they just continue to monitor. So what we're experiencing is anything that has to be of grave concern. They continue to evaluate our gas lines on a regular basis and talked about their emergency response and storms and et cetera. But we have a good relationship with National Grid. I think those of you who were out of power and dying to get the electricity back on before the Red Sox started or shortly thereafter, I think the response time was pretty good yesterday. So we will continue working with them and posting things on our website about any concerns or issues that are going on with parks. Tomorrow, I am so pleased to announce that at 12:45, the governor and lieutenant governor are coming to the Whittier Bridge after a 5-year construction project, and all of the abutters who lived alongside this project for the last 5 years, thank you. Thank you for your patience and your support. This was an important $400 million project, and we were able to obtain mitigation to create the Garrison Path, the shared use path along the bridge, as our reward for dealing with this massive construction project for 5 years. So please come and join us for the ribbon cutting tomorrow. And if you haven't had a chance to walk across it yet, it's absolutely magnificent. It connects our rail trails to Salisbury and Amesbury. Parks Department, we are in the process of negotiating with doing the development for a space at 51R Water Street to consolidate our Parks Department, because we are desperately needing a place outside of Atkinson Common and other places to house our parks. Community service has been around for 100 years, providing a range of services, mostly quietly to our broader community, and they just recently developed a strong partnership with our Neighbors Table and have moved to the basement of St. Paul's Church. Please go there and encourage your neighbors who need the supports and services that they provide. Our Neighbors Table also have their annual breakfast fundraiser. Wonderful organization. You will be surprised to learn that Newburyport is the highest level of food insecurity of all the communities that they serve at this point. Encourage people to use their services, please. Anajax Hospital partnered with the Institution for Savings to do their annual breast cancer funding for the Garish Center at the hospital. It was an absolutely wonderful event. You'll see pictures of Lois Honegger, Marshall Howard, Heather Tierney. They did a fashion show with a mix of people who are survivors of breast cancer as well as others. It was really quite a nice event for the hospital. And Jay Ash was here, Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, giving an overview of what's going on with the state. On Friday, a chamber breakfast. And I just wanted to give you a couple personnel updates. I am standing here with real mixed emotions, telling you that Wayne Amaral, our Deputy Director, who has done such a terrific job with us for the past 5 years or so, has been hired and accepted the job to be the Director of DPW in West Newbury. He's not going far, but we certainly will miss him. And I'm also really pleased to announce to all my new Chief of Staff, Matt Coogan, who's just going to say a few words. Please welcome Matt.
Good evening, councilors. I'll be very brief. My name is Matt Coogan. As the mayor mentioned, I am the new chief of staff for the city. I'll just give you a little background of where I come from and who I am. I have a master's degree in city planning from Hunter College in New York City, and I have an undergraduate degree in anthropology and philosophy from the University of Maryland. Most recently, I've been working for several municipalities in the North Shore. I was the principal planner for the city of Salem most recently, doing economic development for them. Prior to that, I was with the city of Gloucester as their senior planner as well. So I come from a planning background. I've been fortunate to work in all different types of planning and project management, from sustainability, economic development, smart growth and transit-oriented development, coastal resiliency, waterfront planning. So it's been a great experience being on the North Shore, and I'm really looking forward to this new challenge and new chapter in my life. And I'm also fairly local. I'm just down across over the border on High Road in Newbury. We've been here for since earlier this winter. Just to let you know a little bit more about myself, I'm originally from New York. My wife and I moved up here about 7 years ago, and really the reason why we moved to the North Shore is that my wife has family here in Newburyport, and we've been coming up here for the past 15 years or so, and really fell in love with the community. Not only the natural beauty and the great downtown, but the people here, the heritage, the culture here as well. So I lived in Plum Island for a year. We lived in Essex for a little while, but like I said, we just bought a new house in Newbury. So I'm very local, and I really enjoy the opportunity to be working in this community. It's kind of our home base. It's where I take my 2-year-old and my 6-month-old to daycare. So there's been a lot of talk about our children and our future in the city council, and I really truly believe that a lot of good work is done here with the council as far as thinking ahead for the future, and I look forward to working with you all. And this is day one, I'm also honored to be starting day one on the mayor's birthday. I don't know if anyone knows this as well, so I wanted to make sure we all knew that. Happy birthday.
Questions? Just a quick one. Will the lease for 51R be market rate with New England Development?
No, we're talking about $1 a year.
And will it be less than 3 years?
Probably not. Don't know yet. We're still negotiating.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'd also like to congratulate the mayor on her birthday. And as has become our recent habit, we usually sing happy birthday to people. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mayor Howard. Happy birthday to you. Okay, John, congratulations. You should do that more often. No. No? All right. We're now ready for a presentation by the Newburyport Affordable Housing Trust. They asked to appear last month. I put them off because we had a very heavy schedule that night, and we went past 11 o'clock that night. I trust, no pun intended, that's not going to be the case this evening. Speaking for the trust, Judy Timon, many of you already know. Judy, it's up to you. Let's move the microphone over, though. Can we do that?
Marijuana first.
Because there are people at home who should hear the
Take it off.
presentation. Yeah.
Take it off the thing and hand it to her.
Why don't you bring the whole stand?
Why?
Yeah, it's easy, because it's wireless.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that following this presentation, we take up the cannabis-related items for all the folks that are here. We took it out of order last time, and I think it's logical for us to do so again. I don't want to preempt the presentation necessarily, but it's already almost 9 o'clock here, 8:40, so that's my motion.
I think that's...
I cross it.
If people would like to go home and watch the Patriots or have a life.
Patriots be done by way home.
Okay, Judy, go.
Judy Timon, 39 Lime Street, and I'm chair of the Newburyport Affordable Housing Trust. And I'd like to thank the council president and members of the city council for allowing us to do our presentation tonight. Other members of the trust who are here, of course, Karen Weiner is here, and Mayor Holliday is also a member of the trust. We have decided that we do want to do regular updates to the City Council, and since we just completed a 6-year update of the plan, we thought this would be a good opportunity to do that. So the trust was created
back in 2010 in February, and there actually are 4 of us who are still, who are charter members, original members of the trust. And our charter is to support and preserve and create housing that's affordable to low and moderate income households. So often the question is asked, what exactly is that? What's the definition of affordable housing? And affordable housing is housing that is, if it's 30% of your gross income, your monthly gross income, and you are at 80% or less of the area's median income, as defined by the Housing Urban Development. And I do have some figures as to what that means. For a family of 4, that's approximately $82,000. For a single person, it's approximately $56,000. So that covers quite a few people. So the plan that you will be voting on tonight was put together by the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission in consultation with the city, with the trust. That group they hired the consultant. They gathered all the data for us and worked with us to prepare it. So there are many benefits to having a diverse housing within the community and providing housing for at-risk populations, for providing housing to those who need it. A more diverse community is a strong community. Diversity includes age diversity, ethnicity, household type, economics. So the more diverse our community is, the more resilient it is. And the more it can withstand changes in demographics, changes in the economy. So that's really what we're focused on, is providing a diversity of housing. And often what people talk about is the state requirement to provide 10% of your housing that it be affordable. And we don't focus as much on that as we do to when we see the numbers and we know that there are people who need housing, and I'll be talking a little bit about who those populations are. The 10% is really just a line in the sand that the state has drawn and says, okay, if you have reached 10%, someone comes in with 40B, you have a basis for denying it. That's all the 10% means. So again, our goal, and I think our goal as a community, is to provide housing choice for residents and to be able to support and provide housing to those at-risk populations. So the demographics show trends that are not just Newburyport, these are nationwide trends, that the population is aging, 20% of our households are over 65, and the projections are that school-aged children that population will be declining within the next 10 to 15 years. And just so you know, the data is supported by not only census data, and as you know, census is every 10 years, not till 2020. There are intermediate census that is done by the government. The American Community Surveys are done. The state of Massachusetts also has access to UMass Boston Donahue Center, provides a lot of demographic data, and also the Warren Group in Boston provides real estate data. So income disparity is here in Newburyport. It's a very stark reality here. The poverty level has increased. As we're going through an economic boom, we can say in Newburyport, our poverty level has increased from 5.2 to 7%. That's approximately a 30 to 40% increase in poverty. And the income disparities are widening. And again, this is a national issue. Median family income is $103,000. Seniors, the median income for senior households is $46,000. For the median income for homeowners is $115,000. Median income for renters is $43,000. And also, 35% of all homeowners, if you own a home, 35% of you have incomes that are below 80% of that median that I talked about, below that approximately $82,000. So there's quite a few people, more than a third, that qualify as affordable housing. 63% of renters are at that level. And again, this is just a graphic that shows you the disparity of income levels between renters and homeowners. It's quite stark. So the trends in home ownership. Hold on a second. What we try to show within the housing report is what we call the affordability gap. So if you're at that 80% of median income, at that $82,000 as a family, what you can afford is $267,000. That's the house that you can afford. And the median sales price in Newburyport is $521,000. So that's a gap of over $250,000. That's how big the gap has gotten. And that's based on a 20% down payment, a 30-year mortgage, and an income rate of about 4.2%. And that income rate is rising. So it's extremely difficult for your average working family to afford a home here. If you're at 100% of the median income, all you can afford is $334,000. So the gap, even if you're at the median income, it's $187,000. For renters, we've been losing rental units, and we reported this in our last housing report. We reported that we lost, between 1990 and 2011, 383 units. So between 2000 and 2016, we've lost another 500. All you have to do is look at the construction, look what's happening in your neighborhoods. There are rental units that are being turned into condos. And I've looked at the city data, I've talked to the assessor's office. Between 2016 and 2018, an average of 30 condo conversions are happening a year. Buildings are being purchased for sometimes $1.5 million, 6 condo units, no permit required. They're sold for a total, 6 units, $4 million. So you wonder where the rental units are going. They're going in 2s and 3s and 4 and 5s everywhere, all over the city. And again, the median income for renters, $43,000. Now, the informal survey that's on there, I looked on Craigslist. I looked for an apartment for rent at an affordable rent of $1,100, and there was one apartment available, just one bedroom. It's basically a 0 vacancy rate. And again, this is the discrepancy. We're losing them faster than we were losing them when we did our report back in 2012, and that's quite alarming. So what are the housing needs? The housing needs are obviously rental housing for seniors, families, Home ownership, you saw the affordability gap. That is a huge issue. Home ownership for individuals and families, and we need to preserve the current housing that we have. So within the plan, what we do is we outline all of the bad news that I just talked about, all the demographics and all the terrible things that are happening. And we also like to talk about, well, there are things that we can do. And I think I speak for other members of the trust when I say we've got a very supportive community here. We've got a mayor who's on the Housing Trust, and she's an active participant. We've got a city council that's actively participating with us. Councilor Eigenman and Councilor Cronin several years ago initiated the inclusionary zoning. We've got a planning board that supports us and are always asking developers for community benefit and where's the affordable housing in your project. So there's a lot of good news there. And so what we do in the plan is we look at, okay, what are the things that we can do from a housing production standpoint, from a policy standpoint. As part of the zoning bylaw rewrite, they are already looking at modifying the in-law ordinance. Another idea, and again, these are just ideas that we as a trust will work on with the community, allowing two-family structures by right. We want to conduct ongoing community education, working with institutions such as the YWCA, the Justice Action Ministry, and we'd also like to continue to keep you updated with regard to our activities. In terms of production, we, of course, encourage affordable housing development. We'd like to continue to look at the inventory of city-owned parcels and properties. We would like to also continue partnering with nonprofit developers, following sustainable design standards, and those standards basically allow seniors to stay in their homes. In terms of preservation strategy, consider retrofitting municipal buildings such as the Brown School, and that's something that project could become an active project again, and the Housing Trust will advocate for affordable housing, and we would be looking for your support for that. We work with the planning staff to monitor the housing inventory, also possibly allowing conversion of large single-family homes, and if there were an affordable unit that was part of that deal, that's something that we'd like to look at as well. In terms of what we've accomplished in the last 8 years since we started, almost $100,000 of our funds has gone to down payment assistance. The city has produced affordable units. I would say not very many. Mechanics Court, there was 1 unit there. The Toll development, there are 2 units there. The YWCA at Market Street, they added 5 units to their building. And if I just might, I just want to mention, there are some other projects that are on the books. One is the YWCA community over at Hilltop. That's going to be 10 units of affordable housing. They just announced they received a grant. And also they received their grant and should be opening their facility over in Salisbury. And that is in Salisbury, but it serves Newburyport communities. And whenever there is an announcement of a grant for the YW for new units, if something is in the paper, immediately the very next day, within a few hours, 30 to 50 phone calls. When can I move in? So that's, again, that says a lot about the need. We've also established a new program, a small grants program, where we as a trust, and our funds come from CPA, We will be granting to some nonprofits, and there are a lot of them out there that provide transitional housing for domestic abuse, for homeless, for those with substance abuse problems, many operating under the radar that we don't even know about, that have units that may not be on the inventory, and they need to turn over their units very quickly. They need a quick $5,000–6,000 to buy new appliances, to put new carpet down. So we're going to be allowing them to apply to us for grants to provide that type of upgrade and repair. So that's it. That's my summary, and I hope that that has answered some of your questions about what we've been up to and the state of housing in the city of Newburyport.
Thank you. Are there questions from councilors? I know there's a lot to digest in a short period of time.
Yeah, I just want to know if there will be a copy of the slides. Will they be available on the city's website?
Yes, what we usually do is, we can put the slides on the city website and the report. The plan is always, we have our own page under the planning department.
Other questions? Judy, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a long way to go. All right. Consent agenda. Gee.
The consent agenda this evening consists of the following: the approval of the minutes for October 9th and October 22nd. There's one transfer, transfer 30. It's Harbor Master retained earnings, $41,000 to pump out boat purchase, same amount, to go to B&F. Communication 1 is Communication 91, which is a poll hearing, nothing to do with the one that we had at 7:15. That's going to be referred to Public Utilities. That's regarding 3 Perkins Way. The following appointments, first reading. Appointment 61, Victoria Finnegan, 63 Washington Street, Groveland, Assistant Treasurer Collector till 11/1/2019. Appointment 62, Karen B. Wiener, 7 Lincoln Street, Affordable Housing Trust, 11/30/2019. Appointment 63, Jane Niebling, 45 Temple Street, to the Cultural Commission until 9/30/2021. Appointment 64, Sarah White, 349 High Street, Historic Commission until 10/1/2021. Appointment 65, Doug Bullock, 8 Court Street, to the Board of Registrars until 9/1/2021. And appointment 66, David Deluski, 334R Merrimack Street, Tree Commission until 11/1/2021. And that, Mr. President, is the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to council? Motion approved. Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So, mindful of Councilor Zeid's suggestion, we're going to move the consideration of cannabis retail to the head of committee items. It won't take us long to get through these items, the transfers, appointments, orders, and ordinances now, unless...
This is second reading.
Second reading.
Second reading, right?
Second reading. Yeah.
Second reading.
It is an ordinance. I'm sorry. Maybe we should just move ordinances to the top ahead of transfers then and get to it right away. That'd be great. Right. That's the point. Is that reasonable to the members?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll move ordinances up to the head of the agenda here. Let me try something else first. We have the mayor's update to take care of. Second. Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, that's out of the way. Let's move to ordinances then. We have ordinance 24. Second reading, marijuana retail sales. Would you like to introduce that to us, Richard?
Ordinance 24, let me just flip to it. It's the second reading, amended. It's a number of pages. It is, aforementioned, it's allowing retail marijuana in 2 districts. It goes on for a couple of pages. It is submitted by Councilor Earls, and it had a first reading. This is the second reading. I think that's the gist of it.
Motion to approve on second reading.
Move on second reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilor Eigenman.
Yes, I was not expecting so much testimony tonight, so I know many of the counselors don't need to hear from me again, but I think it's important to explain where we are on this. So I still favor this compromise zoning. I think one thing we all are aware of here on the council is if we reject this zoning or we were to tweak it again on second reading, we would have statutorily have to start all over again. We'd have to go back to the planning board. So that's one point. The other is I think no matter what happens with a ballot measure, we will have settled at least where we think zoning should be done. So third, my understanding is that there is no legal prejudice to a ballot measure if voters want to go ahead with that. And in fact, Ms. Scow was right to point out we can also, by 6 of us, put it on the ballot ourselves. We would have to waive our rules to do that tonight, though. I want to make that clear to people here tonight. It's not in the packet. It's still in my committee. We have 4 items coming out. That's not coming out. So we would need a supermajority to waive that and bring it out, and that's not my intention. So I guess what I would ask that the council put the zoning behind us with the understanding that, of course, the voters and the council reserve the right to place the question on the ballot. And then the question of if it's a special election or a general election, all of that is, up in the air. All we're voting on with this is to finish what we started 3 weeks ago and close that out. Thank you.
Councilor Z.
Yeah, so I also want to speak. I think people should hear from us since we've taken so much of your night. Well, I guess a couple things I want to respond to for those who didn't come last week. So I really like the question about how could this happen in a year? I think that's a fantastic question given how long it takes some time to do other things. And the answer, as I opined last time, is the state. The state is the reason that it can happen a year because they have, in a lot of ways, bound our hands to a timeline, which is largely out of our control. And that it basically fits in with the moratorium, which most of you are probably now familiar with. We have a moratorium until 12/31. But after that, I think the greatest concern for many of us here is that once that date expires, A, we don't know that we can get a longer moratorium if we did decide we wanted more time. But 2 is it seems that that's not the case. So that's how it can happen in a year. The second thing I want to reply to is a little bit about money. So money is always important. I'm kind of the money guy, so I love my numbers and my spreadsheets. The cost to do a special election is about 12 grand. I mean, we have this discussion seems like every 3 months or 6 months on a different topic. I'm not usually known to be the one that says, let's spend money on things. Maybe people may know that about me, but I just, it's okay to spend money on sort of democracy, I think. That's okay. So I just want to say that. And I also want to respond to a second part about money, which is that this concept that this is going to be the savior for us financially or something. So the finance director thinks we're talking about 100 grand a year on the 3% sales tax. If we double that, because we get another 3% in the host agreement, that's maybe 200. I would love to have $200,000 to spend more on our roads, but I had a constituent email and say, well, you got to consider the money. I always consider the money, maybe sometimes too high on the list, but that's what we're talking about here. So this isn't it doesn't save us from anything, and it doesn't set us off. And quite frankly, we don't really know what the costs are going to be. We can't do an analysis because there's no data on which to do it. Colorado's, is maybe one place you can look, but different states have different things, different implementations. So it's not like I could stand here and say, yeah, we're going to cash in on the 200 and our cost will end up being $3,000 and it's going to be great. So I don't know where the money takes us, but I just want to let people know that it has been considered. We beat that up in committee during the 3%. To the matter at hand tonight, I still think the most prudent and responsible thing for the council to do is to zone this in the way that we've come up with here. And that's because I am worried about the timeline, and I will not have my name associated with just letting it become a free-for-all. That, to me, is the least desirable situation. If you haven't figured it out already, I'm open to a ballot question, and like the Ward 2 Council, I don't believe that these things are mutually exclusive, so they don't have to, for one to happen, the other one doesn't have to fail. So that's important to note. Another thing about elections, one thing I do take sort of offense to is sort of etching away and fighting at the validity of an election. So this is like a new thing now, like, well, you know, if we have it as a special election, it may not be as good as a regular election. I don't know. I mean, I don't like that, because to me, this is our system, and it's you know, the worst system in the world except for every other system. So this is the one we have, and people have to go and vote, and that's just how it is. A couple other thoughts, because I hope not to speak again. I do acquiesce to the argument that we didn't vote on this specific thing. You are 11 counselors here that represent you either directly as a ward counselor or as an at-large. We're trying to make that decision on your behalf. That's what we've fought about for the last 9 to 12 months, even though we just took the first vote 3 weeks ago. And the final thing I'll say is about consistency. So I'm sure I'm going to get emails tomorrow that say, if you're okay with a ballot question, you're being inconsistent about your position. The truth is, I actually feel very consistent because nothing's changed. Everybody that contacted me that wanted it, but just not in their backyard. So to that effect, you know, if it was coming near them, then it was a problem. And that to me is not support per se, but rather just, I'm okay with it, just don't put it here. And so to me, if nobody wants to have it in their backyard, can you really say that anybody wants to have it? And I don't know. But we are up against a tough position with the state and with respect to the timeline, but also the shifting sands underneath us with respect to the Cannabis Commission. So I'm going to vote for this again as I did for the first time. I would not vote on a ballot tonight because I'm not confident we have the language right. If we're going to get a useful outcome of a ballot question, we do need to have the debate about what the question is, when it's held, things like that. But I am open to the possibility. So that's my 2 cents.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I voted no last week on this issue. I'll be voting no again this week on this issue. I voted no in the November election. I don't want marijuana in this city. And we talk about a ballot question, we talk about saving money. We already got approved to have this special election for something from the state, so we put this on the same special election. It's a hell of a buy, $6,000. Go up.
Councilor Genta.
So I am the counselor. I'm Councilor O'Brien, actually, also. We're the counselors that sort of got this thrown at us. Most people know, I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say it until this is resolved, is my ward voted, and they voted against this. And now this has been dropped in my lap. So somebody out there put some signs out this week, and it showed exactly where the zone was. And the zone goes from Hodges Ice Cream, which I assume children congregate, up to Children's Health Care, who just published something on Facebook that they're against it. Of course, they're in the zone. And of course, it goes all the way down to the mobile station. And of course, it goes up Woodman Way and Clipper Way to all those homes there.
Yeah, good place for it.
Yeah, good place for it. And it now includes Port Plaza and Market Basket Plaza, which both the owners of both plazas have come out against it also. So here we are today. We have a zone right now for marijuana that was, again, thrown at me at the last minute at the last meeting, and quite frankly, nobody in the zone wants to be in the zone. So here we are. So I'll be voting against it, and the main reason I'll be voting against it is the fact that I have 90 families at Newport condos that nobody's given any consideration to. They don't even have a buffer. They're just in the middle of the zone. So I'll be voting no. I know this will pass again tonight, but we will move on, and I will be voting in favor of a ballot question.
Councilors, any further comment? Councilor Shand.
I want to agree with our ward councilor from Ward 1 and Ward 2. I would like to see us finish what we started. And I am certainly not opposed to a ballot question. I applaud all the folks that called me this week and said that they were going to put a petition together. I think that's democracy in action. So thank you very much for being involved. But for right now, I think it's unconscionable not to finish the zoning that we started. I don't want to see this go everywhere in the city as it would. So as it stands right now, my vote will still be yes for the zoning.
Other councilors? Councilor Tonton?
Yes, I voted yes last time. I'll be voting yes again.
I think the question as to whether it goes on a ballot is something that we will deal with. I am concerned, given the fact that when this was on the ballot in 2016, it was a general election, almost 80% of the registered voters in Newburyport voted in that election. And special elections, it's 20, 30%. So that is a concern of mine, putting it on the ballot. Secondly, I think I would like to say about the issue as to whether or not cannabis should be in the city. Cannabis will be legal, is legal in Massachusetts. It will be sold, as you've mentioned, in other communities, but it has been illegal in the United States for 90 years, right? Since the 1920s, right? In an effort at first promoted, which is essentially an anti-immigrant effort against Mexican immigrants who call it marijuana, right? And then there was another effort in the Nixon administration, war on drugs. It failed. The Reagan administration also had a major effort that resulted in the incarceration of a lot of people, all right, and cost us a lot of money and destroyed a lot of lives, and it also failed. Cannabis is there. Cannabis is here, all right? And this is an effort that actually, the legalization, and I voted for in 2016, is an effort that actually can bring more control over cannabis than what we now have, which is the Wild West. So I will once again vote yes on this.
Councilor Khan, could you hold your applause, please?
Thank you, Council President. I think many people have already heard my position on this, but I do want to also rise in support that we have reached a compromise. It was not easy, it was painful, but I do want to take a couple of seconds just to kind of talk about, again, I've talked about my journey and some of the comments. I have to respond a little bit to it. I think someone said, have you ever been around someone who's had pot? Well, I don't drink alcohol for religious reasons, and for me, being around people who drink alcohol, sometimes I don't like the smell of that either. So I think one of the things I just find is, it's for me looking at this and coming to the decision I did, is I looked at it in a logical way, knowing that it's been legitimized in our state and there's a Cannabis Control Commission formed. Maybe I applied too much logic here. And to me, when I hear people, I'm a parent, I have kids, I talk to my kids about things. Just because I guess I'm a little surprised at how this one topic, I feel like I've been targeted. I mean, we are supposed to exemplify to our kids what democracy is, but also what respect is. And some of the things that I think we all need to remember, we may disagree, and I know that's going to happen, but to be taking to social media, to be taking and sending emails, and sometimes I think we just still need to keep a level of respect for each other as we deal with these topics that are not easy. Going back again, I try to get the public involved, I try to do the education needed, and I am going to vote in support of this compromise. When it comes to the ballot, that is where I wanted to go back to vote in March and April. I've had months now to look at the Cannabis Control Commission regulations. I've had time now to understand what is a retail shop going to be looking like. I've looked at the community host agreement process. A shop is not just going to open, there's additional processes. So one thing that I did identify that needs to be done, because I'm always thinking of how to educate. The survey was done, the forum was done. I think an FAQ is what's now in my head that's needed so that people will know all this aspect, everything, what it's going to look like, because I don't think people do know that. So I'm taking that on for an FAQ, and before we talk about ballot, I'm hoping to have a lot of information out there for people, and I will take that on and make that available. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Hearing none. We'll take a roll call vote on second reading of this matter.
So roll call and a motion to approve for ordinance 24. Councilor Devlin being recused. Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
No.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
Nope.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tontar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Z?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Eating 8, receiving 8, second motion passes.
Thank you, councilors.
Jesus.
We have another ordinance. I think maybe we should just take that up as well, which is ordinance 23. Could you walk us through that, please?
Ordinance 23, a second reading again, known as the waterway fees, establishing a way to do fees in the future. It is including two tables, and it is submitted by
Me.
Councilor Rolls and Councilor Devlin, who is now back in session.
What is the will of the council?
Motion approved.
Second by Councilor Sandra. You should do it. Discussion. Discussion. I think we're familiar with this. Hearing none, we'll take a roll call on this matter.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Motion approved on ordinance 23. Councilor Rolls? Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien? Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tontar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
10-1, motion passes second reading.
We're going to move to the head of the regular agenda to transfers.
The first transfer is an emergency preamble, transfer 31, emergency preamble for the general fund, from the general fund, on the following. It's a matter for the purchase of a generator. It is time sensitive due to the failure of an emergency backup generator, such that there is no power for DPS main building and garage in the event of an outage. Therefore, the City Council hereby affirmatively declares that an emergency exists, such that Rule 12A be waived and Transfer 31 may be voted upon at its first introduction. Submitted, Councilor Tontar.
So we'll need a roll call on this. We need 8 to accept the emergency preamble.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve by Councilor Tontar, seconded by Councilor Vogel. Discussion. Councilor Tontar.
I'm just simply going to say, this is a real emergency. Right? We don't do this in 12 to 15 weeks. That's all we're going to say about it.
Further discussion. Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Councilor Devlin on the motion to approve.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yep.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
11-0. Motion for emergency preamble passes, leaving the transfer itself. Transfer 31.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilor Tontar.
The generator was 30 years old, it broke, it's not terrible. It'll take 12 to 15 weeks to order another one and get it here, which brings us to late January, early February. If we need it as soon as possible, I urge you to vote yes, I will.
Further discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So it's done. Well, transfer is done. We have one appointment on second readings.
Two.
Are there two? Second. Oh, yes. Go ahead. I apologize.
There are two second reading of appointments. Appointment 59, Scott Hanley, 1 Milk Street, to the Tree Commission until 11/1/2021. And a reappointment, appointment 60, Paul Bevilacqua, 126 Merrimack Street, Unit 3, to the same Tree Commission until 11/1/2021.
Council?
Motion to approve on second reading collectively.
Second. Moved and seconded to move these collectively. So, discussion. Hearing none, let's get a roll call.
Councilor Devlin on both appointments.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes. And the outcome, I guess, is successful.
Motion passes.
Orders.
First order is the tabled order, 58, CPA Project 4 Slate Roof Custom House.
Motion to remove from the table.
Second.
Moved and seconded to remove from the table. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's off.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Moved and seconded to receive and file. Discussion.
I would just note for the public's sake, because we have another order coming in on this, so that, because the Community Preservation Committee has recommended it once again, so that does away with the legal problem that we had. So it's a new order coming in.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of receiving and filing this item, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's received and filed. Next order.
Next order is actually blank. It reads that there will be this percentage of local levy to be assessed by each class of property and established by the adoption of a residential factor of blank for fiscal year 2019, submitted Charles Tontar.
Might the chair bundle orders 67 and 68 together for action tonight?
Sure. 68 order is that the City of Newburyport tax rate for FY 2019 would be set at blank for all classes, also submitted by Councilor Tontar.
Councilor Tontar.
Motion that we collectively refer to order
I
67
think we
and
have to
68.
I'm sorry. My mistake.
To the Budget and Finance Committee. Thank you.
Second. Moved and seconded to move to Budget and Finance. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's done. Next item.
Next item is coming right up. That be order 6069?
Yep.
69 EP first.
69 EP,
Yep.
which reads as follows. Pursuant to Charter Section 29B, an emergency exists. A request by Waveguide, Inc. is time-sensitive due to the time of year and the approaching winter season. This has been in committee since September 24, 2018. This order allows the grantee to install approximately 3,000 feet and up to 10 associated handholds for the purpose of pulling fiber for data connectivity on Low Street all the way to Graff Road. Submitted Councilor Z.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Genta. Discussion. Councilor Z.
I'd like to just speak to the emergency only. So again, the reason this is an emergency is that we do have the upcoming winter season, but really I think this is one of those things where maybe the intent of the charter is not exactly what was not captured by the language. So this has been in committee. It's the same thing. It's the same application. Part of the committee's work was figuring out that we didn't really want to just approve a communication. It would make it very hard to codify terms and conditions, and felt that it would be better to come out as an order. We worked with the city clerk thinking maybe it would be okay and try and make an argument to come out, start with a communication and then convert it into an order. But this felt cleaner and that historically would reflect the record better by having come in with a new number, with an order. The downside to it was I have to stand up and ask you for an emergency preamble, but I'll ask you for it because I think in this case, the intent of the charter is satisfied, and I'll speak to the merits of the matter if you support this.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call on the emergency preamble.
Order 69, motion to approve emergency preamble. Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Bryan?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tontar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Z?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Needing 2/3, receiving 11, motion passes. That leaves us with the order itself, Order 69. That is submitted by Councilor Z. It is a rewrite, if you will, of the measure that's been in committee. It's the grantee first light grant period. I should read perhaps, for a period of 25 years from the date of City Council approval, if grantee fails to commence construction within 12 months, the grant shall be considered invalid. Grantee may apply to the council for an additional 25-year terms anytime within 12 months of the expiration of the existing grant. The grant it allows them specifically to install 3,000 feet of 4-inch conduit and up to 10 associated handholds for the purpose of pulling fiber for data connectivity on Low Street and continuing to Graff Road. See attachment A for specific, for a map, site plan. Terms and conditions, would you like me to read that?
No, I think that's sufficient. I think
Thank
we've
you.
already heard a little bit about this. What is the will of council?
Motion to approve.
Moved and seconded by Councilor O'Brien. Moved by Councilor Zede, seconded by Councilor O'Brien. Councilor Zede.
Yeah, so I just want to maybe put aside for a moment the vehicle and just talk about the substance of the order. So the first thing is identifying the correct party. So there are 3 parties involved in the project. There's Waveguide, there's another company I believe called DB Consultants or something to that effect, and then there is First Light. And the reason that's important was we wanted to make sure we were granting this to the right party. First Light is going to be the owner. DB Consultants, which you haven't heard about, is the architect. Waveguide is the construction, or the contractor, pardon me, that will do the physical installation, and First Light is the actual holder of the grant. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, it is time limited. That was purposefully done. The reason we came to agreement, I think, on 25 years is that the expected lifespan of the fiber is about 20 years or so, give or take. In a protected place like an underground conduit, it may last a little bit longer. So I think there was consensus generally that 25 years was acceptable, and that 25 years cycles thereafter could exist, anticipating, like I mentioned earlier, that no one knows what the future holds. This specific location is known to be busy for underground utilities. The city, we just did the force main there, but there are also several gas mains, and that brings me to the terms and conditions. So number one, first and foremost, public safety. So it's all on the grantee to ensure that they've talked to DigSafe, they're dealing with DPS because they have local knowledge that even the gas company doesn't have. And number two is it's by 2 schools. So by its nature, it's a very busy area. DPS had to deal with that when they were doing the force main, so they know about it. But the grantee needs to basically work with not just DigSafe, DPS, but also you'll see here that if the police marshal decides that a detail is needed, they will do that. Okay, next thing is you can't dig in the street. So this was unanimous if there was anything in the committee because we just paved it following the Low Street force main project. I don't think anybody wanted to support allowing penetrations in the road, no matter how small or how nicely patched they may be. And I think opening the road would add some more challenges to the public safety aspect of it. And then the other thing I would say, so there's also a bond that would be posted with the Department of Public Services. We really tried to do belt and suspenders here. I will say that in that same vein, DPS knows of this company and has dealt with them in the past, and they support the project, they support the applicant. That was a little different than the previous one we saw, where nobody seemed to know, or maybe it was a little bit of a challenging situation. And then the final piece, I think, is that the final 2 pieces is the grant is very specific. It's 3,000 feet, it's 4-inch conduit, so it's fairly small. It gets installed by directional drill. We included a full map in there as well. There's a high-resolution copy with the clerk if you want to see like the 11 by 16 or whatever it is. And the final piece is that it is revocable. I think having this fail-safe is always important, and I think what differentiates it maybe from something more along the lines of an easement is that if this becomes a problem, then there's recourse for the city to handle it. And the final thing I'll say is just, again, on the cost, we're charging for this. We did talk about it, probably one of our biggest parts of our discussion, and again, a combination of not feeling as though this is not a profit center for the city, nor can it be, but also that these kinds of things are some of the things we have to do to drive companies to bring fiber in, and we asked them in jest if they'd wire the rest of the city. They're not ready yet, but maybe someday. So that's, I think, as much detail as I can give you. The city solicitor was involved in this, did review this order. I'm open to your feedback and thoughts on it, but that hopefully sets the stage for how this got started and where it is now. And it came out 3-0, and if I misstated anything, my committee colleagues will correct me, I'm sure.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Agaman.
Yeah, I'll vote for this order 69. The order that was at the poll hearing was this one-page one, and that's what I was going from and asking the 2 gentlemen about, and I wasn't satisfied with their answers, and I don't like this forum either. But I still think probably the city solicitor is being a little cavalier about our charter, but I'm not going to stand in the way because Condition 15 says it's revocable for any reason. Works for me. So I'll vote yes.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Devlin?
Oh, I did not raise my hand.
I just want to respond to that.
I thought your hand was up.
So this was very confusing when it came in. That's why that original one is kind of frankly, it's a bit of a copy-paste from National Grid, what they send us, because no one really knew what to do with it. So we tried to work through it, and I appreciate the consideration. If I had known that was I would have mentioned it, but that's the winding road we've been down.
Additional comment? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. It is done.
Yes.
That means yes.
Different letters.
AYE as opposed to... Okay. Next item.
Is Order 70. City Council appropriates $175,000 for the Clipper City Rail Trail and the Harbor Walk Phase 2, jointly submitted, Councilors Tontar and Zede. There's a
Motion
supporting
approved.
memorandum.
Budget and Finance.
Second.
Motion was moved to Budget and Finance. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next item. Transfer 27.
Next item is Order 71. It is a CPC Committee recommendation for Project 4 Slate Roof Replacement at Custom House Maritime Museum. Recommends appropriation of $101,914. Submitted, Councilor Tontar.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Moved and seconded to move to Budget and Finance. Discussion. Councilor Z.
So I will be opposing this referral to committee, and I'm hoping that enough will join me to keep it from going to committee. While some of us may disagree on the frequency with which we deny things into committee, I can count on my hand the number of times I've voted against sending something to committee. But first of all, this has already been vetted by Budget and Finance, so if you want to send it to us again, as far as I know, are the same three people. We might dress up for Halloween, but it's the same three of us, so hi, me and Councilor Tontar and Khan as well. And second of all, as far as just because something's legal doesn't mean it's right. So I mean, the attorney did provide us with a very good, I thought, good opinion, and clearly stated that one way out of this legal conundrum was to simply go to the CPC Commission and ask them to suggest it again, which apparently they were happy to do. But in terms of what's right, you would typically think you'd only propose something if something's changed, and preferably favorably. And the irony of this is that things have changed, but not favorably, because the NRA is running away without essentially, listening, if you will. I know that there are some details, and I will try and not mix my comments between this and the resolution, but why would we send it to committee again when it's already been listened to once, it's already been voted down, and the new information that's available is actually not favorable and not moving us in the right direction? So I hope you'll join me in saying no, and then we can talk more during the resolution.
Councilor Argument.
I'm going to vote in favor of sending it to committee, and I'll give my reasons. So I don't support where the NRA has gone with this, and we'll talk about that later. But so far as I can tell, the only leverage that I've been able to detect with the Maritime Society is this $101,000. So, the NRA basically is not listening. We asked the state for oversight, and they declined. So I'm not saying I am going to approve this, but I do think it's proper for it to go to committee, and under our rules, it has to go to committee. So I'm going to vote yes.
Further comments? I'm going to take a roll call on this.
This is a motion to refer the matter, Order 71, to Budget and Finance. Councilor Devlin.
No.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
No.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
No.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
No.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Needing 6, receiving more than 6, matter goes to Budget and Finance.
Oh, joy.
Next item.
Safety.
Order 72, submitted by Councilor Agaman. It is essentially putting a number of streets into 2-hour parking.
What is the will of the council?
Motion to refer to Public Safety.
Seconds.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Councilor Zede?
I just have a brief question about this. are these the kinds of things that we should refer to the Parking Advisory Committee? While it's not a standing committee, I have this discussion with the parking clerk, switching his hats for a moment, about how we use the Parking Advisory Committee. And my question is maybe it makes sense. I mean, if that was the original vehicle that was thought, I don't know if we can even by our rules refer this sort of thing to a non-standing committee, but I just want to throw that out there, especially if we're going to start, continue doing a lot of these, that this is a big one for downtown, so it all ties in.
Councilor Item, would you like to speak to the rules on this, or?
Well, yeah, the question. Yeah, so there's like 8 of these. Every single one of them is in Ward 2. I'm the sponsor. You have my word. I will take it to the Parking Advisory. I don't think we can refer it to them formally.
No, our rules say refer to committee consideration. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Ordinance 73.
Order 73 is a stop sign. Newhall Lane shall have a stop sign at the intersection of Elizabeth Lane traveling westerly and easterly. Submitted Councilor O'Brien.
What's the will of the council?
Motion to send it to Public Safety.
Second. Moved and seconded to Public Safety. Discussion? Hearing none. Councilor O'Brien.
Yeah, I had from a couple of residents that four corners up in Newhall Lane, and the stop sign at 2 of them, and I went up there and sat for a while, and probably the average speed, I would guess, was 40 miles an hour going through there without the stop sign, so I'd like to have a stop sign. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Public safety. Ordinances, we have done those, that's good. Committee reports, budget and finance.
Motion to remove transfer 27, sale of municipal equipment to school tech upgrades.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Second was Councilor Zede or Jim? I couldn't tell. Councilor Zede.
So the
Councilor Tontar.
The $18,000 was the result of selling the and the IT director of the schools indicated when they bought new computers, I think they were Chromebooks, all right, that they would sell the Surface Pros and put that toward buying the Chromebooks, and we need to do this transfer, so that takes place. The committee, again, voted 3-0 to recommend approval.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is done. Anything else?
Motion to remove transfer 28, which is a transfer of $22,500 from proceeds of reserve settlements to the Reservation Terrace new sand berm construction.
Second. Mr. President,
I have to recuse myself due to a perceived conflict of interest, family-owned property in the vicinity.
Thank you. Do you want me to speak to it? It has been moved and seconded.
No, to remove it from
To remove from committee.
So
Yes.
we need to vote.
Yes, I know that. I was waiting for the councilor to recuse himself. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, I'll say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion
It's out.
to
Second. Moved and seconded. I think, do you want me to speak to it? Discussion.
I would just, transfer $22,500. We got testimony that it's necessary to put the concrete blocks in to stabilize the sand. We did not discuss in committee whether it went to 67th Street or 63rd Street.
It goes to 63rd Street.
It goes to 63rd, so that's happy news. And also, they're 2x2 by 6 foot blocks, and they cost $100 per block, which apparently is a very good price. And we voted 3-0 to recommend approval.
Further discussion, Councilor Zede.
Yeah, so this is, an effort to try and help us, I think, a road that's particularly vulnerable. And the questions for me as the ward councilor is, of course, it's always appreciated to see money headed in this direction if it can help. But the question is the $22,000, is this the best way you could spend it? And the answer really is yes in this case. There's nothing else you could do for that amount of money. For example, the other things we talk about on a monthly basis at Plum Island meetings is things like nourishments and dune planting and all that sort of thing. But when you factor in basically the time of year we're at now, the cost it really takes and all of the regulatory hurdles you have to jump to do things like nourishments, This is an effective use of money, as what is unfortunately for these folks who are losing a lot of land in front of their homes as a sort of somewhat of a last defense. It does protect the homes, but from our perspective, perhaps, or your perspective in the city-wide, a lot of expensive sewer infrastructure there and water infrastructure that won't cope well if it's underwater. As far as the distance goes, this has been, I got a million emails about this in the last 5 days, so you heard it from Tony, so the idea is to go to 63rd, and the grade, if you haven't been out there, sort of shifts as you go down Reservation Terrace. So it'll be two blocks high, and then where the grade determines it, it will drop down to one block grade, and then go as far as it can. There are some existing blocks right at the corner of Reservation and 73rd. Those will be retained and maybe reset. They're very large blocks, so those are in good shape. Somebody asked me about those as well. You heard from a few folks. It's kind of a tough situation out there, so your vote is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's done. Motion to remove transfer 29, the transfer of $99,197 from the Plum Island Utility Trust Fund to Olga Way Pump Replacement Project.
Second.
Moved and seconded to remove this from committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's out. Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilor Thompson. The sewage system we have out on the island is a vacuum system, and these the vacuum pumps have an estimated life of either 20,000 hours or 10 years. I believe we're at 12 years now and 24,000 hours, something in that range. So it's time to replace these pumps. The transfer, you'll note, is from the settlement that was reached with CDM Smith Incorporated. And so the question is whether or not we're replacing these pumps because of the damage that was done. And the pumps have had extreme usage, 24 hours a day, during 3 events in the winter of 2009, 2015, and 2018. And because of those emergencies, the pumps had to run ceaselessly, right, 24/7. So why did they have to run so much? They have to run so much because of the way the pits were constructed, and so therefore the cause of the need to replace now is entirely because of the CDM Smith. I think we're past the date when we can't say nasty things about them because of the CDM Smith Incorporated really messed up on the island. And I'll say that publicly. All right, yeah. Oops, now we don't have this money anymore. No. The new pumps actually have an increased ACFM, which is cubic feet per minute of 2708 instead of 1820. That allows us to buy 4 of them. It gives us a lot more capacity and builds redundancy into the system that we do not now have. The committee voted 3-0 in favor of recommending approval. Further discussion? Incident, just let me mention, sorry. Approximately 60% of the pumps are in Newbury, 40% in Newburyport. The town of Newbury, right, has agreed to pay, actually, it's close to 60%, $142,747 of the total cost.
And that is welcome news.
Councilor
Yeah, thank you. So first is 100% of the pumps are in Newburyport, just in half in jest as it's getting on to 10 o'clock. 60% of the accounts are in Newbury.
Okay, they go.
100% of the pumps are in Newbury.
All right,
Right. Anyways, I don't have too much to add. I think the Budget and Finance Chair covered it pretty well, but I always have to give Jamie a thank you for his exemplary work. I think I told him on the way out, I think, he crushed all the technical questions. The other nice part about this project is it gives us an opportunity to fix some of the deficiencies in the design of the structure, particularly with a rail that allows for easy removal. So there's some public safety, employee safety benefits and maintenance ease. I just want to comment, the only thing I really want to say is the source of the funds was the biggest question for me. I am very sensitive about the Plum Island Trust Fund because I regard it as like the last big money that supports Plum Island. And after hearing both Tony and Jamie, I think if this is an appropriate use of this money, I never personally wanted it to become just a slush fund to use anytime anything goes wrong, but I think there's reasonable justification for this, to spend this money on these pumps, and I'm quite confident that we've come up with the best possible technical solution. And last but not least, just to remind everybody, this is a continuing string of improvements. So one big benefit of this is that we're frequently very much on the line as far as the vac pressure all the way at the very ends, the tips of the island, which is a problem because if you drop below, you're already, it's like a patient who's already has a low heart rate. You don't want to go any lower. So with these, the expectation is we can actually be healthy at the edges of the island, which is probably the most critical. It's like all the way at the extremities, essentially measuring circulation, if you will. So I hope you'll vote for it. And again, thanks to DPS for all the hard work.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call on transfer funds from the trust fund.
2/3. Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Genta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
Oh, yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tonto?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel? Yes. Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
10 yeses, 1 oh yes.
Is that it?
Count for two.
Well, before Mr. Tukalo leaves, I want to say thank you for your years of service to the community. You're leaving us soon?
Where's he going?
No. Wayne, Sandy, you're not? So long. Then I want to thank you for your hours of service tonight. Get out. We'll see you at your desk tomorrow, 8 a.m.
I wouldn't have said that if I was up there.
I'll accept the motion of censure.
Exactly.
Oh, gee. I guess it's getting late. All right, education.
Just notification here of our meeting for everybody, if anybody wants to attend. We're going to be meeting on Monday, November 5th at 5:30 at the Senior Center, and we have the Friends of Newburyport Track coming in to chat with us about their progressions down at Fuller Field and what their future plans are. So come on down and join us. What's that? Senior Center. Yep. November 5th.
Committee on General
5:30.
Council Vogel.
Motion to remove ordinance 007.
Second. Moved and second to remove 007. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No, it's out.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Moved and second to receive and file. Discussion. Councilor Vogel.
Thank you. The committee met on this and voted to receive and file, and if my colleagues of the committee have further to add to my narrative, please do so. This is basically, we've received opinions on this from a couple of attorneys, and it's contrary to our charter, therefore we're going to receive and file it.
Further discussion. Councilor Genta.
Sure. One of the ideas that was thrown out there, and for folks that don't remember this is from months and months ago, it was the idea that the city council should be able to approve who the city solicitor is. And through research and two opinions from lawyers, it is completely an executive branch function, so we don't really have a say. But we do have a charter review coming up. So that is something that we probably want to put in there as something to be discussed during the charter on whether or not we want to have that happen. And one of the opinions that came to us said that the city solicitor has to basically be like a department head for us to have a vote. So I don't know how we necessarily handle that, but I think when the charter comes up, it's something that needs to be on our list.
Thank you, Councilor. And the vote of the committee was?
In favor.
Further discussion. Councilor Zede.
Yeah, I just want to say that I support receiving and filing it. While I don't think we necessarily adjudicated the claims of this, we did come to a good compromise where the city council gets an attorney. I'm very happy about that. I personally, feel the city council can and should have a role appointing the city solicitor, just as we do with everything else. One of the opinions stated that because the legal department isn't on our website as a department, it's not a department. That was pretty dubious to me. But again, we came to a good place with it, and I think the Ward 5 councilor has a good point that there's room for further discussion. To the other part, which didn't get discussed as much here, I just wanted everybody to know, having set triggers for the city solicitor was not received well by the planning board. I went to a meeting, and they were very busy. I stayed until 11 p.m., but I did chat with them, and they still prefer the we'll call when we need it sort of situation. And at the moment, I think that's where we're going to land, and we can keep this discussion going. I think it's a good one. Thank you. Councilor Augerman.
Well, I just want to clarify for the public, there are actually two parts of the ordinance. So the first part was the one where we got a legal opinion saying it violated the charter. That's having to do with approving the city solicitor. But the second part about mandatory attendance of the city solicitor at meetings of the zoning board and the planning board was perfectly legal. It doesn't mean we should do it, but I just want to make that clear. And I realize the planning board has an opinion and the zoning board has an opinion, but this is a nagging problem. And, it's not going away.
It is. Councilor Vogel.
Yeah, thank you. You know what, pardon my lateness here, or pardon my lack of brain, it's getting late. We did discuss that, and in actuality, there has been discussions with the chairs of both the planning board and the zoning board. So the word is getting to them that if they need help, come after it. And so at least it's out there, it's on the table. Pardon me again for leaving that part out.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of receiving and filing this item, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is received and filed.
Motion to remove ordinance 16.
Second. Moved and seconded, remove from committee. Number 16. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilor Khan, I believe was first. Councilor Vogel.
Thank you. This came out of committee 2-1 in favor. There were a couple of questions in the committee meeting. The first one was interesting. So we don't really have a process for this, for doing such things as we're hopefully about to do. There were questions about where did the names come from? Is this your best friend? Is this somebody you know? I recognize all these names here from over the years. These people, what was the name of their... they had a name for their...
Yeah. It'll come to me.
What was that? Anyway, they were very, very active, and when I was the Ward 5 councilor, we met with them with regularity at DC's house.
Maybe for environmental balance?
That's it.
What was it?
Sir.
Yes. And, yeah. So anyway, great people, great effort, and the signs already exist. The mayor made a comment about being there at a ribbon cutting for something that doesn't really exist. So in any event, we voted in 2-1. I think the objection was the fact that we don't have a process, but we're approving this. I voted in favor.
Further discussion, Councilor, I believe Councilor Eigerman was... Go ahead.
So just on the procedure, we actually, you might want to clarify that these are not streets or public, because we have a procedure, we're only allowed to name public streets after veterans. So we don't have a category for trails, but you might want to
think about
clarify that. Yeah.
Public properties, anyway. Councilor Genta? I guess the clerk wants to jump in.
No, I just want to make the further point that I think inadvertently you said ordinance, and I just want to make sure it's in order on the record.
It's in order, yes. Councilor Genta.
So the naming of the trails, how this came about is across the street from the mobile station on Story Avenue. We had our first sort of trail naming. And what came about is when we went to get some grant money, we realized that the trail didn't officially have a name in the planning department, and that became a snag. So we had to officially name the trail for the grant to get the money. So when the trails were finished here, and I guess most people will know, when you go down Hale Street now, there's a boulder and it has a brass plate on it, and it is the Cooper North Pasture Preservation Trail right there. Well, that sort of marks sort of the completion of the trails. The Boy Scouts have been out there. They've been building like little bridges over the wet spots so you can walk through them. So there's a lot of work that's gone in there. But the reason for our end of it, I mean, obviously the reason to name the trails after these fine people is these are the folks that sort of saved and nurtured that area. That area looks the way it does today because of these good folks. But the reason we really need to do it is because if they go for grant money in the future, which they did go for grant money, I believe, very recently, these have to officially have a name. I did speak when this first came in with the planning director to make sure we weren't going to have sort of a violation in regards to veterans, but because these are trails, we can move around that. So that's all I got.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the committee recommendation, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Done. Counselor?
Motion to remove communication 48.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Hearing none, all those in favor of taking this out of committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, it's out.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Moved and seconded to receive and file. Discussion. Councilor Vogel.
Thank you. The reason that we came to the conclusion that we should receive and file this is that this is basically a letter, doesn't call for any action. All committee voted 3-0 in favor.
Further discussion. Councilor Genta.
It's very timely that this came out because this is a letter about marijuana retail ballot question, and it specifically tells the council how there can be a ballot question, whether we put it on there or whether the residents put it on there. As we saw today, a public comment. And it does lay out what the law says in regards to a city and town can hold a local vote to determine whether to permit the selling of marijuana or marijuana products for consumption on the premises at commercial establishments. So this was a letter that was sent to us in May by a resident, and it sort of lays out how this ballot question could all happen.
Further discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the committee recommendation, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Thank you. That matter is disposed of. Councilor Vogel, anything else?
Motion to remove order 64.
64. Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of taking this from committee, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's out.
What is it?
This is in
This is a late file. It's on the table.
Late file. Oops.
This is the resolution.
Councilor Vogel?
I'm sorry. Let the clerk have it.
It is the so-called Question 3 resolution, a number of whereases stating, be it resolved, we the members of the Newburyport City Council do hereby express our commitment to defend transgender equality in Newburyport, and will hereby pledge to sign on to Freedom for All Massachusetts Yes on 3 coalition to say clearly discrimination has no place in Massachusetts and no place in Newburyport, jointly submitted Councilors Tontar and Khan.
So for a matter of discussion, motion to approve.
Just a moment, councilors. I do think Councilor O'Brien is raising a question, perhaps indirectly, why it was not in the packet. And I'll defer to the clerk.
Clerk clarified it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're all set.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councilor Vogel?
Point of order, I don't have a copy of it. I don't.
You know,
Table.
yeah, on the, all 3 committee items were on the table, I know. I don't know where they went, but,
Okay, Larry. That's it.
you know, I probably have an extra one.
Right here. That's enough. I gave him one.
Here, you got 6 copies now.
Discussion.
Well,
I guess to make a motion.
right.
Oh, do we have a motion? I'm sorry.
I think
Right, for the matter of bringing it to discussion, motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Thank you, councilors. Councilor
Vogel.
Thank you. So we had a discussion about this in committee, and there was actually an amendment that was offered in committee that failed, 2-1, the amendment failed. And I will, if I don't take this completely, I will refer to Councilor Junta to clean it up. So there was a concern by Councilor Junta, particularly about the paragraph that begins whereas the November 6th, 2018 statewide election includes a ballot question. Again, without putting words into his mouth, he objected to that for reasons believing that we are campaigning here in City Hall. The second, and so his amendment was to remove that paragraph, and then there was a further amendment on the be it resolved to stop that paragraph at the word Newburyport in the second sentence. So it would simply say, we, the members of the Newburyport City Council, do hereby express our commitment to defend transgender equality in Newburyport, period. And then we were going to allow the discrimination has no place in Massachusetts and no place in Newburyport. We were simply taking out the reference to sign on to the Freedom for All Massachusetts Yes on 3 coalition. And for the most part in committee, or for in committee, we agreed with that, that we would accept that, but we were not in committee in favor of removing the November 6th, 2018. We felt as though that was simply stating a fact. It wasn't necessarily related to campaigning in City Hall, and I will leave it to that for you all to discuss. I mean, we're certainly all in favor of this. It's simply a matter of where we are with campaigning in City Hall. If that answers it, if that helps.
Ms. Clerk would like to clarify something.
I wonder if I could ask the counselor. Yeah. So the only thing that was changed was some words in "be it resolved."
Well, what we did come through, so the amendment, the amendment as it was both the November 6th was to be taken out. It failed. The amendment failed.
So,
and then the second part of the amendment was, and then for the most part was agreed upon, but we still are in failure. In the second,
it's as written.
It's as written now. It's as written now. Thank you. The amendment failed, but I was trying to explain what the amendment was.
There was a second amendment.
There was a second amendment.
That passed.
So we have a motion.
We did do that. My mistake. I'm sorry.
We have a motion to approve on the floor.
Okay. Wait, hang on. There was a second amendment.
One moment.
Councilor Vogel still has the floor. Is there anything else,
There was
Councilor?
a second amendment. I do apologize. So we did approve that. So in the be it resolved, the last paragraph, what we removed was from the word, after the second Newburyport in the second paragraph, we removed "and will hereby pledge" right on to the word "clearly," and put a period there. So the sentence simply reads, we, the members of the Newburyport City Council, do hereby express our commitment to defend transgender equality in Newburyport, period. And then further saying discrimination has no place in Massachusetts and no place in Newburyport. So that was approved. My apologies. And then I'm sure we'll have a discussion now on whether or not that paragraph with the November 6th should continue. It passed 2-1 as amended the second time. Sorry, everybody.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion. We have a motion to approve on the floor. Councilor Eigenman.
Yeah, motion to amend as to the second, the "be it resolved" on the next page, which refers to the 9th of September. I would suggest we strike that. We don't need it anymore.
Yeah, sorry. You're right.
So it would just, and then the attest as well, because the attest went with the Yes on 3 coalition thing.
Yeah.
So I would strike all that. That would be my proposal.
Second that amendment.
Discussion of the amendment. Councilor Junta.
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Councilor Junta.
Yeah, so, I sponsored this along with Councilor Khan.
This is what we're talking about, though.
Yeah.
Just this last
Just the amendment, Charlie.
Oh, that's right. It's not, the motion is coming in as amended. My apologies. No objection.
I think we want to discuss the body, point of order, but
I think we have to act on the amendment first. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. The amendment was to strike the items on the second page, be it further resolved, and the attest. All those in favor of adopting that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that matter is struck. That portion is struck. Further discussion on the original motion to approve. Councilor Genta.
So I'm a member of general government, and I'm the one that proposed the amendments. The reason I did, and I'll start at the bottom and work my way up. When you look, it says, and we will hereby pledge to sign on to the Freedom for All Massachusetts Yes on 3 coalition to say clearly. The reason why I struck that is because if you go on their website, it is a campaign website, and what they do is they promote all the bodies that sign on to it. So that line to me is clearly campaigning because they're using us to campaign. I really have a big problem with any campaigning in a public building. That's just me. I just think this is a place where we don't campaign. This is where we make laws. And when this first got to me, I was like, oh, wow. So when we had 2 committee meetings on this, and my thought is if you can get everything that states the ballot question out of it, we will be no longer campaigning. But when my first amendment was to strike the signing on to the Freedom for All Massachusetts, my second amendment is where it says the November 6, 2008 statewide election includes a ballot question. To me, that's campaigning. And we really shouldn't be spending taxpayers' money in City Hall campaigning. And that's my opinion on this. So my plan is to try to remove anything that looked like campaigning so we could just continue to move forward with it. Because I don't want to campaign, and I'm really not comfortable with campaigning in a public building. So that's where I'm at.
Further discussion? Councilor Tantar.
So there is a bulletin on this from the Office of Campaign and Political Finance. And I apologize, so I'll read it. And it is basically the prohibition is against spending public dollars in favor of a ballot question. And there's law on that in the Anderson case. However, this is, in the bulletin, it states, officials may discuss a ballot question at any time, including in an official meeting of a governmental body, right? Which is what we're doing now. Secondly, can take a position on a ballot question. Officials may endorse or vote as a body to endorse a ballot question and may issue statements supporting or opposing a ballot question. However, the distribution of such statements should be restricted to such usual methods as posing on a bulletin board or press release, not in a manner restricted by Anderson. In other words, not spending any public money to promote it. So, given that reading, I would be opposed to the amendment that the committee offers. I got to say, I will not vote against it because of the amendment, but I don't think it's necessary. I'd like a strong statement by the council in that we endorse a yes vote on question 3, which is perfectly within our right to do. And incidentally, the discussion on this is that the prohibition against spending public funds on ballot questions does not remove our First Amendment rights.
Councilor
I think we've struck the right balance here so we can pass this thing. And it is, again, just stripping away the ballot measure, it's our existing policy. And also, we do have precedent where even though we have an existing policy that we reaffirm it because times are bad and we want to do that. So I'm going to vote in favor, but I'm only going to vote in favor because of the 2 amendments. So striking the attest on the second page and getting rid of the yes on 3. So I don't deny for a second the opinion letter from the Office of Campaign Finance or whatever it is. That's their opinion. They may even be right on the law. I think it's a kind of slicing very thin to say You're not spending money if you put it on your website. You're not spending money if you print it in the packet and someone burns gas to drive it to our house with the packet. So it's not great legal work. But that's not my point. My point is I just think it's a bad precedent. I don't really want to we have so much trouble on this council doing difficult things, like marijuana is a good example, and we all have to deal with that, and we've been doing it on a nonpartisan basis. And I mean, I'll tell you right now, not that anyone cares, but I'm voting yes on 1, 2, 3. I'm voting straight Democratic ticket, but I'm not bringing in a resolution on that. Because I really don't think I really don't think I don't really think that's something we should be doing. So if I think you got to strip out this yes on 3 thing, or really it's just a horrible Pandora's box. So again, not on the merits of transgender rights or any of that, but it would never end. We would and it reminds me of some former counselors that had all kinds of resolutions about animals and all this stuff. Don't want to do that.
Thank you. First, I think it's been fairly obvious part of my political philosophy, or my philosophy of life in general, is people can do what they want as long as they're not hurting me. I don't care. I went to an all-girls school. I was the second male class, and they didn't have the money or the facilities to put in male bathrooms. So for 4 years, I was in the ultimate gender-neutral bathrooms, where we pooped, peed, brushed our teeth, shaved, showered, and did all sorts of other things amidst women, men, gay men, lesbian women. I'm sure there was some transgender or people who were struggling with their gender identities at that time at 18, 19 years old. Nothing untoward happened. I will note, this is the law right now, and maybe 6 to 9 months ago, we had a resolution that was very similar to this about the human rights and the Human Rights Commission and our beliefs. I have a real problem with these types of resolutions. First of all, it's 20 past 10. We've got 3 children at home who are now sound asleep. I have not seen any of them since I popped home really quickly at like 5:15. These do take up time and money. We get paid, it's $5,000 a year, so it's probably down to about $3 an hour, but this is taking up time and money. So if I had time, I appreciate the opinion of an economist reading the Office of Campaign Finance Reform Bulletin, but if I had time, probably could have found something or had the inclination or the idea that this was a problem. We can find an argument to make against this, and that's not what I'm trying to do. What I don't like about these is I have to get up and say, I'm for this, but I don't, this is, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt that they're doing this out of great care and consideration for others and compassion for people. But what it's doing is it's coming into the sanctity of the ballot box. You want to come in with me when we go to vote at the Hope Church? This is a place where I'm not supposed to go in with anybody. I'm supposed to have my own private thoughts. Some people could say that this was a litmus test in other more cynical, communities. This would be a litmus test about where you stand on certain things. What are your political beliefs? I think this interjects activism into this council when largely what we're supposed to be doing is helping run the city from a financial perspective. And making operational decisions from a financial perspective. I have spoken to many people over the years in my 2 campaigns. The last campaign, I followed several people who had spoken to the same neighbors and neighborhoods, and not once. I challenge everybody to go back and look in your notebook and to see where this was mentioned there. There are people out there, there were people here who were saying, I'm raising my children, I'm working, I'm not, I have a very limited amount of time. So some of those people see this as us, distracting ourselves from some of the core things that we're supposed to do. My biggest problem is what Councilor Eigenman alluded to, and I'll use a legal term. It's a slippery slope. Are we endorsing some politician's platform next time? Are we going to be required to endorse some party's platform in the upcoming, national election? I think I don't care what the Office of Campaign Finance says, I think this is wholly inappropriate. And I think a better way to express your views rather than bringing it here is to write a letter to the editor or write an op-ed to the editor, everybody sign on to it who wants to sign on to it, because you did. You got applause from people. I'm sure there are people that are in your social group, and you got applause from them because they believe in this, and I'm not opposed to this either. But I am opposed to this type of resolution, and originally I was just going to say I'm going to vote present, but kind of thinking on this, I don't think this is an appropriate resolution for us to bring forward here, and I'm not even talking about the content. The fact that I have to keep on saying I'm not talking about the content, I have to defend myself. I'm talking about principle. You're talking about have emotional and it has emotional connections here, and I'm sympathetic and compassionate to that position, but I just don't think this is appropriate.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion, Councilor Khan.
Thank you, Council President. As one of the co-sponsors for this, I thank everyone for this dialogue and this conversation on this. In terms of the amendment, I am in favor of that amendment, and I will support that. I do want to keep the other whereas with the November 6, 2018. And let me give some of my basis. I appreciate all the comments I'm hearing, and I understand we don't want to be politicizing from this chair here. But I do want to make one point, two, maybe four. The first one is I want to talk about the codification that's actually already in our Code of Ordinances, and it's actually for the mission statement, and that is something that we have here, which is the second whereas. And so we do ensure equal opportunity to each person, regardless of race, color, religious creed, national origin, sex, age, ancestry, sexual orientation, gender identity, so on and so forth. And so we actually do have this statement of transgender right protection. But here's the bigger point. Yes, we do manage the financial aspects of the city, but what else are we doing? Is that all we're really, as we're sitting here and giving our time, and we are away from our families, as I am as well, as all of us are here, why are we doing this? And we have been elected to do this. So we, just even me being who I am and being in front, I've been elected to represent the people. And the times that we are in now, I look around this table and I don't know if anyone faces the kind of discrimination that I face on a regular basis in this city. My daughter gets called the N-word on the bus. My mom gets, asked, where are you from? Why are you here? How long are you here? The things I hear is hard. It is hard. So when I know there are marginalized people in this country, in this state, in this city, to be able to have and use the power of our voice, the power of who we are, that we're elected officials, we're representing people. Just standing up here is a proud moment for me because it's something I never thought that my parents ever thought I would ever do or they would be able to do. So yes, this is, maybe I can understand we don't want to politicize, and I hope that, I'm not going to share how I'm voting, but I do think that it's really important for us to take this one step further. The kind of horrific things that we are reading in the paper that are going towards groups is horrific. And for me to feel like I could do something and say, you are welcome here. We have a resolution here to support you, to support your rights. That makes me proud. This will be a proud evening for me when this passes. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilor Zeid.
Yeah, so I want to speak to it a little bit. So let me just start off real simple. So I'll be voting yes on question 3 when I go on the ballot. I'm going to maybe sugarcoat it a little less than my at-large colleague. I think these things are detrimental to what we do as a body. I appreciate the sentiment, I really do. I'm sorry to hear about the experiences you have. I don't have them, but I think it's sad that happens. So it's a dialogue we need to keep going. But as was said, it's already the code. So how, reaffirming something over and over again is not necessarily an effective thing to do. If there are enforcement issues or if there are problems that are happening, then we should be tackling the actual things that are happening. To the Ward 4 counselor, I read OCPF 19101 and 9202, which both cover Anderson at length. I read them cover to cover several times. I have a slightly different read than you. I acquiesce to the idea that, yes, they do permit bodies to endorse, but there are also several gotchas, and I think the Ward 2 counselor kind of touched upon them briefly as far as the legal work. Number one is use of public resources. OCPF IB 9202, public resources may not be used to influence voters concerning a ballot question. I mean, that's a statement taken from it too. So it's maybe a little bit grayer than you can just endorse a ballot question and you're done. Number two, they go on about use of the city seal, which this is an order and it uses the city seal. Number three, call to perform a specific action for a specific ballot committee. This is one that hits close to me. Is there's so much discussion now about money and politics and all this stuff. This is a reporting group to OCPF. You can look up their public reports. They have nearly $1 million. I immediately recognized this order as the boilerplate language that they wrote and disseminated, asking people to sponsor it in their communities. I don't think people would take kindly to that if it was for a cause they didn't agree with. So that's usually the litmus test of truly how you feel about something, is would you be okay with it if it came in from something you didn't agree with. I can tell you right now, there's a lot of opinions about question 1 in this room, but I don't think we need to be talking about nurse staffing ratios on the city council floor. I just don't. Number 4, the Anderson case goes on and on about non-neutrality of disseminated materials. So when you disseminate materials, you're supposed to be non-neutral, be neutral to the extent that you can. And then finally goes on at length about acting within the scope of your responsibilities. So that's state law is not really within the scope of our responsibilities. The other thing I want to mention, because we got onto the law, and my Ward 4 colleague and I love having legal debates on a quarterly basis, I would say, is that it's not the only part of the law that covers this. The ethics law of Newburyport covers, of the state, covers this as well. And they have a long FAQ, if you will, and advisory opinions as well. And they go on about, what you may do and what you may not do, and they go on. So in some ways, to be honest with you, some of the damage, in my opinion, is already done because this went out in the packet. It got disseminated. It got, you use the power essentially of the city, in my opinion, to drive a specific ballot question, and people may applaud, and I think that's great for supporting the matter at hand. But you can't break the whole system just because it's something you like, and that's for me is how I know that it's a difficult vote to take. So I think we should strike the mention of the ballot. I think you can get, if not unanimous, very close to unanimous with it. And I would ask for your consideration on that. Otherwise, really, the whole point of it was for a ballot. A couple weeks ago when this came to the floor, requested that if we can move expediently so it can come out before the election. So I'll be up here saying the same thing for future questions or future affirmations of things, but that's how I feel about it. So I hope we can talk about that some more.
Further discussion? Councilor Contar. I would just respond to the at-large councilor who said it was a matter of principle. It's a matter of principle, and I appreciate it and acknowledge that. And one of the things that we can't, I can't say you don't hold that principle. I can't say that the Ward 1 councilor doesn't have those principles, so I acknowledge them. I disagree with them. All right, I disagree with them. I think when the rights of transgendered people are threatened in a political campaign, and we have a city that has come out with a human rights statement against discrimination against anybody, all right? All we are doing is we are saying that we are opposed to that state effort to impose on us that particular view. And my principles is we have a right, and not only a right, but an obligation to make that statement.
Further discussion. I'm going to ask the clerk to clarify what is...
Right now, Mr. President, as I understand it, we have a motion to approve as amended, and there were 2 amendments. Be it resolved, the first be it resolved, the following partial sentence was struck, and will hereby pledge to sign on to Freedom for All Massachusetts GS on 3 coalition to say clearly. That portion of that be it resolved was struck, and by a previous motion to amend by Councilor Eigenman, the second be it resolved was struck in its entirety, and the attestation was also struck, leaving us with the remaining resolution.
Thank you. Councilor Genta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to say one more thing before, we head off on this one, is, in committee, we tried to do everything we could to sort of make this seamless, because the removal of the November 6th statewide paragraph, when you take that out, this actually reads very nicely, and it doesn't speak to any campaign at all. And the word, one counselor kind of spoke to it dead on. This is a boilerplate document from a campaign, is what it is. So I'm not going to campaign in City Hall because I have that principle. But I did vote last year in the informative in regards to we're not going to discriminate against anybody in Newburyport, and I voted for that last year. So everybody knows where I stand. But I won't be campaigning. I'm going to reel in the emotions here and just say this is a campaign document. I'm not going to participate in it. I will abstain from voting. Because I will not use taxpayers' dollars to do campaigning in City Hall.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a roll call on this matter.
This is motion approved as amended, Order 64. Councilor Devlin.
Present.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman. Yes. Councilor Genta.
Abstain.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Present.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Meeting 6, resolution passes.
Thank you, Councilor.
Nothing further from general government.
License and permits. Nothing tonight. Neighborhood city service.
Nothing tonight.
Planning and development. Unfortunately, I have
Nothing tonight.
Mr. President, motions to remove Order 33, Adoption Housing Production Plan.
Second.
moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
It's out.
Motion to approve.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councilor Ackerman.
Yeah, so just this is a guidance document. I want to draw your attention to the end, the last paragraph. Now therefore let it be resolved, the city of Newburyport.
Whatever.
Adopt the HPP as a guidance document. A guidance document. It's not binding. I want to make that clear.
And I do want to commend the way they wrote the action items too. They say that we're going to study these issues, but it doesn't say you shall change your zoning to do X, Y, Z. I think it's reasonable. As I said during the committee meeting, 40 affordable units a year is pretty hard for Newburyport when we're averaging only 30 units overall per year. But, we all recognize it's an issue. 90% of the report is just data. And I think it's a well-done document, and we did carefully look at it. And we recommended it 3-zip, I think. Am I right? 3-zip at committee.
Further discussion. Councilor Zede.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that because, I always look at the action plan and, that's always the challenge. So like things like modify the in-law ordinance, which said, you can have an in-law without having it be an in-law, allow two-family structures by right in R2 and R3. I mean, there are always controversial things, and one of the most difficult things about affordable housing is it's usually contrarian to some of the, anti-density feelings that we have, particularly in my ward. I won't speak to others, but I know there are similar ones, and Brown School is probably ground zero for that discussion. So I'm going to support this. I think a good effort was done. I appreciated the presentation, but challenges abound. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Genta.
Just to piggyback on that, as far as in-laws apartments, we're in the ward that I represent, of course, we have a lot of ranches, splits, colonials, we have big yards, and in-laws apartments would be a really good thing in my side of town, to be able to keep mom and dad home, live with the kids. We just had a renovation done with my neighbor across the street, and they couldn't put in a kitchen on the addition because that would break the rules. And you think about it, it seems silly. They had all the space in the world to build what they wanted to, and the daughter was coming back to live with mom, which made a lot of sense for everybody. The neighborhood was in full support. But when you think about what they had to build to stay within the laws, you're thinking, well, that was kind of silly. They really should have put in a second kitchen and made it an in-law. But so this is a good idea.
I agree with you. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the committee recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. This is done. Planning development, anything else?
Oh, yes, sorry. Motion to remove Order 65, Custom House Resolution.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion, Councilor Eigenman.
So in committee, this also was recommended 3-0, but we amended it in committee, and the clerk has the language. There was a typo. We mentioned the 99-year lease twice. Just very simply, it's late. The right thing to do is to keep with our policy, which has been the City Council's policy for about 50 years. It's actually in an ordinance from 1971, which says the land goes to the Historical Commission and then they lease it long-term to the society. That would be the right way to go. And it's the way that we did it with the firehouse, and it's worked famously. And the reason why is because it's a private organization, as came out in committee. They're not subject to public meeting laws. They're not subject to public records. It's very tricky to do it by deed. Now, I'll be very plain. Political reality is we have a fallback position, some of us. Councilor Zeid has been principled, and he is sticking to the ownership. I still think we should send this message, even though, speaking for myself, I'm willing to cave on the ownership for political expediency if and only if we get those deed restrictions. And if we don't get those, then it really is sketchy legally. But please support this resolution to send a message. It's very frustrating that the NRA takes this attitude that they really, as a body corporate, owe nothing to the people of Newburyport, and that's, that we had that kind of testimony actually during the confirmation hearings. Very distressing. So please, I hope, and if there are any questions on what this all means, I'll answer them, but with that, I'll sit down.
Further discussion? Councilor Wilson?
I'll be very brief. I started off opposed to this and have moved into favor. I thought maybe we could get there with the deed restrictions and so on and so forth, but I agree with the councilor from Ward 2. I think that the message is appropriate. I'll stand in favor.
Thank you. Councilor Zeid.
Yeah, thank you. I really hope we can go unanimous on this. I think it's basically what we talked about for 2 years in the ad hoc and came to at that point. It's what they came to in 1971. And there will never be a deed restriction that will be better than ownership and a lease. Never can it be created. It's impossible to expect an attorney today to anticipate every possible scenario that could happen for all of time. I am planning to hang on here until the bitter end about holding on to ownership. I just think it's the right thing to do, and I think it makes the most sense. Deed restrictions also have issues with the expiration. That was discussed at the NRA. They default to 30 years, believe it or not, and then there's some questions about you can do longer, but how enforceable are they? So this is an important one. I have not, the thing that keeps sticking with me as well is I haven't heard a single argument about how ownership would be better for the city. I've heard about why ownership might be better for the Custom House Maritime Society, but I haven't heard for the city. In fact, the only shred I've heard is that It will lead to a more financially stable custom house, and that's better for Newburyporters. But the ironic, God, I am losing my words. The irony of this is that there's, again, before us for another $100,000 from the CPA, and during the meeting, they said, we look forward to the CPA being a continued source of funding. So you want to have it both ways. It just is not right. So I can't ascribe to that argument. And all the other things I hear from people, well, let's make sure they don't mortgage it. Let's make sure they don't lease it. Let's make sure they don't build on it without some approval from. All of those things sound like a lease. That's what leases sound like. They don't sound like like a sale with a deed. And I jokingly say, if you're sitting at your couch watching the Red Sox and somebody knocks on the door and said, hey, I used to own this thing 10 years ago. Let me tell you what to do with it. I think you know what you'd probably say. Take a hike. So I hope you'll support this, and I hope we can go strongly on it.
Councilor Junta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I never speak this much. We had a lot of good stuff in the packet.
Let it go. It's good for you.
Yeah, I know. It's unbelievable. So one of the things people have to think about is when we had our waterfront ad hoc group that I think went for 2 years, I sat into the last few meetings. The waterfront, the NRA was in those meetings with us, and we voted on whether to give the land to the Custom House twice. And it lost twice. And they're still moving forward with giving the land to the Custom House for $100. It's land that's worth millions, right? Or at least $1 million, and they're giving it to them for $100. And I used to be a member of the Custom House. I love the Custom House. I think they do a great job, but we only remember just a few years back that they were in financial trouble. So now we're giving them this giant asset. And hopefully they will never have financial problems again. But if they do, they have a gigantic asset that they can leverage. The land really would be much safer in the city's control. I've come around on that thought process also. And then with a lease where they now have the city's cooperation, they have the city's help, the city's assistance in regards to the things that they want to do to move the museum forward. So I'm going to vote for this. And again, I'm very disappointed to see the NRA continuing to move forward on what appears to be a bad idea in all directions.
Councilor Tantar?
Why?
It's just Scribner's.
I am a current member of the Custom House, and I do intend to vote in the affirmative on this. I don't understand why the NRA is insisting on turning the property over. I'm not going to go on because of the hour, but I will vote yes.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll accept a roll call vote on this.
Just for clarification, for the record, there was one change in Order 65 at the bottom of page 2, where the words "to a 99-year lease" were changed to 2 words, "to lease," correct?
That's a Scribner's.
So with that said, motion to approve is amended. Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Z?
Yes.
Councilor Connor?
Yes.
One more thing, Mr. President, motion.
Just before you do that, I want to thank the efforts of Councilor Eigenman, Councilor Zeid, and Bill Harris to take what was at times an uncomfortable and unpopular, depending on which audience was around, position regarding the sale and lease. I'm not sure if it's over yet. It doesn't feel good right now. But I want to thank you for your advocacy and for your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Motion to remove Order 66, late file easement on Hancock Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded to remove 66?
Yes.
66.
Of committee. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion?
Yes, motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Eigenman.
This was unanimously recommended below by the committee. Just to explain, this is the Neptunes, actually, their property. They're having a building developed in the back on Hancock Street, on their property. And the problem is there's a tree smack dab in the middle of the sidewalk, and so the public needs to jog around. So if you look at the diagram, that tells the whole story. by getting this non-exclusive easement, the public is also able to go around the tree. So the one thing, Councilor Junta was actually running the meeting because I was late, and he asked, shouldn't we have the city attorney, the city solicitor review this? And yes, we should. So I guess...
Councilor Khan brought that up.
Councilor Khan's question,
Yeah.
sorry. So I guess maybe someone want to do that as an amendment, that it would approve subject to review by the city solicitor. I'll make
Correct.
that motion.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
And now to the
Yeah, motion to approve is amended.
initial...
Second.
Well, we already have that on before, so... Councilor? Yeah, this is my only comment since this is in my ward. This did go through the planning office, so they did review it, and now it will go through the city solicitor, which is a good thing. This was the only thing I want to add that wasn't mentioned. This was a condition of approval for the project, so we're closing the loop here. We're finishing the work that was started, and that's it. Yes, save a tree. Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's real estate. It needs a roll call. I stand corrected.
Motion approved is amended. Order number 66, non-exclusive use easement. Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earl.
Yes.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien. Yes. Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar. Yes. Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Connell. Thank
Yes.
you.
That's if the committee did not want to take out the NRA one, right?
Yes. Leave
I
that in.
wasn't there for that part. Am I right in leaving it in?
Yes.
That's it, Mr. President.
And the table of use regulations is not coming out.
That's not coming out now. That was an error.
Public safety.
Yeah, motion to remove communication 90 from 10/9/2018, Harborside Half Marathon and 5K.
Second. Moved and second. All those in favor of taking this from committee, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No, it's out.
Motion approved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Yes. Mr. President, I've spoken twice with the race director, Arlen Chafee. We had a committee meeting today with the race coordinator, Mike St. Laurent, and his lovely wife, and I think it was Lauren as well. They have all the sign-offs, they have the park permit, they have insurance. They've done this before. Prior to this race was called the All-Women Half Marathon and One Lucky Guy. It's the same race coordinator. So they've done it for approximately 9 years in Newburyport. They've spoken to Lieutenant Samasco's 12 to 13 details. They're going to be at every crossroads with also having race marshals there. They're not really going to have any road closures. They can pause, they'll pause traffic on any intersections. The 5K and half marathon starts at 9 a.m. 5K is going to start rolling in and finishing around 9:30, and the half marathon anywhere from 10:15 to 12. They have the same race coordinator as the Green Stride, which was just run. This route takes them Parker, Malcolm Hoyt, to Hale, out to Turkey Hill, but left on Turkey Hill to West Newbury, so out through the road on the edge of the reservoir to South Street in West Newbury, and then down Indian Hill Road over to Middle Road, and then back down through the reservoir to the point of, right where Turkey Hill splits off. When they're on Hale, it's only going to be half the road, so vehicular traffic will be able to be run on the other half. Same thing with Turkey Hill. Then it finishes, it starts at Mark Ritchie, but it finishes down the rail trail, and again, they're going to keep it so people can still go on half the rail trail. And the one amendment to the plan they gave us, rather than finish at Cashman, which they had approval for, and having a beer garden there, their event is going to be small enough that they can have it at Michael's Harborside, so they're doing it there instead. They'd rather give the business, it's about $18,000 to $20,000 in business to the Michael's Harborside, so they'd rather give it to them. We have asked them for 3 conditions: that they notice by delivering a flyer to everybody on Hale Street, notice that it's coming. But they also put the newspaper, which Green Stride did, they advertised the times and when racers might be coming by certain roads in the paper. Then they have signs, which Green Stride also did, because it's the same coordinator, that they're going to post a week ahead of time along the route saying at about 9:15 this time there'll be traffic. They really place that they race traffic, but they're going to have at Turkey Hill and at 2 other intersections a police officer and race marshals, and they will stop. This is not a qualifier, so they will stop the runners to let people through. And they call it pulsing the runners. So with all those conditions, it came out of the committee 2-0.
Discussion. Did they meet the rule, the 60-day rule?
I don't have that record on me, Mr. President.
The filing deadline for an event?
It was late filed to us.
Yeah, it was a late file, which came in on October
We had that
9th.
discussion.
Thank you. Further discussion. I apologize for the interruption. Yes, go ahead.
All of those things have been discussed with both Mr. Chafee and Mr. St. Laurent, and strongly worded instructions to what to do next year.
Thank you. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No.
That's all.
Anything else from
That's it.
Public Safety? Thank you, Councilor. Public Utilities.
Motion to remove Communication 88, please.
Second.
Is there a second?
Yep.
Right here. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. It's out.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Move, receive, and file. Discussion. Hearing none. All those say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay. It is received and filed. Rules Committee.
Nothing to report.
Good of the order. I have something, but Councilor Zede, you can precede me.
I just have 2 quick things. One is I want to share the sadness that Wayne is leaving. As a ward councilor, the guy has been an immense asset to those of us who serve as ward councilors. He's just been awesome to work with, and I think his presence will also be deeply missed on TSAC because he has a lot of traffic safety experience, so that's a real bummer. But with that being said, I wish him all the best at his new position. I just felt it needed to be mentioned. The other thing is, anybody who wants to call me to talk about how we cannot go until 11 o'clock every I mean it seriously. I mean, something is wrong with our workflow that we're here just getting killed, I think. And part of it for me is that if we don't start our meeting until after 9, it just makes, by the time we get through the other items. So I'm trying to brainstorm and would welcome anybody who has any thoughts about this, that we can somehow try and get a little bit better under control to stop getting right up to the limit so many times in a row.
I agree that Wayne's going to be missed. On the other hand, maybe we'll get some assistance from West Newbury over there on repairing the bridge on Hale Street.
Good idea.
Silver lining.
Could be. I have something to announce, and that is the formation of our 5-member committee. I want to thank Councilor Zede for spearheading that idea. I've come around. I wasn't originally supportive, but I think that it's a good idea. And so the 5 members will be the members of the Planning and Development Committee, Councilors Eigenman, Junta, and Shand. Also joining them on this committee will be Councilors Devlin and Khan. I'm charging Councilor Eigenman with chairing the committee, asking that he involve the planning board, and I know that's to be negotiated, but they're our partners in this enterprise, have been up to this date, and I think they have a lot to contribute. We also have an unpaid volunteer consultant on planning and development issues, and that's Mr. Rick Tainter, former planning director for the city of Portsmouth. Finally, I'm going to ask the committee
to report to the full council their findings by December 10th. That's our meeting in December. We acknowledge the time is short, but sometimes there's an advantage. It kind of focuses attention on getting things done. And so Councilor Eigenman and I have spoken about that, and I commend you for volunteering, and good luck. You've got a lot ahead of you. Further matters for the good of the order? Hearing none. Motion adjourned. Second. Moved to second. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed?